The Corvallis School Board meeting for December 17th, 2020 has been called to order. I would like to invite you, if you're willing and able, to join me to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. I would like to welcome you all for joining us. We have a great people here, and I look forward for their introductions shortly. I want to announce the roll call for our board members. We do have all our board members with the exception of Director Therese Jones, who couldn't make it with us tonight. And also I want to mention that some of our board members, due to social distancing and technology limitations, they might not be able to have their camera on all the time. And with that, I would like to welcome our community members who are watching us on YouTube and encourage them to continue communicating with the board through public comments or email. We appreciate public input and always look for it. The next item on the agenda is board member reports. Is there any board members who would like to give a report? And as a reminder for board members and our participants, feel free to click on participants and then raise hand on the platform so I can call on you. Director Lohoy-Weber.
Thanks, Sammy. I just wanted to give my report for the school rename task force work. And I haven't been able to do an update yet, so I'm really excited about the work that's being done. And the commitment to the resolution and the charter by the task force has been great. And one of the best things I feel like that's, was this an appropriate time to talk about this?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. I was like,
I was having a hard time hearing you, Lou, and so I was
okay.
talking about turning out.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I was like, oh no, this is the wrong time because I've never done a board report. So thanks for hearing my first board report, everybody. But I did want to mention that and give a lot of gratitude to the many hours that are being spent by the task force members on this. It's a lot of work, and thank the whole community for the level of engagement. I feel like everything that was hoped for in the resolution with community and student engagement is coming to fruition. It's really amazing to see the thought that's going into it. There's, it's all on the task force webpage. I encourage people to take a look at that to see how many names were submitted by the community. It was a lot. And it was, it's awesome. And also the learning that's going on with students in the schools to do research. And so you can tell people are really taking this seriously, engaging with it, and putting a lot of effort into what it can look like, and also seeing what community-based education can look like too through this process. And I'm really excited to see what happens for the rest of the meetings, and really excited to see what's presented to Ryan to present to the board. And just wanted to let you all know about that. And I don't know if we do questions for board reports at all, or if that is something that doesn't happen, but that's basically what's been going on. We have 8 meetings now, I believe, and we have a couple more next month. And so stay tuned, keep an eye out on the local papers if they report more on it, and look for future meetings as well.
Thank you, Lou. If there is any questions, if you're willing to take them, maybe we can designate a minute or two for those.
Sounds good.
Sarah?
Yeah, I actually don't really have a question, but I just want to say thank you to Director White-Bear and to all the members of that task force. I've been following along, and the sort of list of the sort of pared down list that we have right now got me really excited because it was some people I knew about and then people I didn't know about. And I just felt like this was this great opportunity to educate myself and for kids and community members to educate themselves about important people who we should know more about. So I just, it just felt like we were at a, as the work that's been done so far felt really good. So just thank you for all of that.
Thanks, Sarah. It is really amazing.
Vince?
So likewise, I'd like to express the appreciation to you, Lou Whitebear, and to the task force for, just really unfolding the work in a way that the board intended, that had deep community engagement, and that's what we were looking for. And I'm just curious, based on the pace of the work of the task force, when do you think that the task force will be giving a recommendation to the superintendent?
I think that, I don't know if that's a Ryan question on if there's an extension. I know that there's already 2 additional meetings planned for January, and I believe that's going to be it. But I just see them on my calendar and read all the materials and find out what's going on. But really the person who is helping with that communicates with Ryan.
Yeah, I can take that one, Lou.
Thanks, Karen.
So we had hoped to be done about now. And then we realized that there's additional time needed for that committee to continue to come together. And so they've added 1 meeting that they have held this week, and then they've asked for 2 additional meetings in January. So it's my hope that at a February board meeting, we can come back, or I can come back and bring forward the recommendations of that superintendent's committee to you. So at this point in time, I would say February, it looks like the time will be when that will happen. At the same time, I've continued to remind the committee that they needed to take the time they needed to take, and that's something that I've also heard from board members. So I felt affirmed in sharing that message with the committee. And so if they need additional time beyond those 2 meetings, I would definitely ensure that time was provided. So right now I'd say middle of February, but that could all change based on the timeline. And again, the scope of work, looking at the renaming of 3 of our schools, as well as looking at the names of our other buildings in the school district and looking at that criteria set forth based on the resolution. So it's a big task, and it's also something that the committee takes a lot of, just kind of piggybacking on what Lou said, takes seriously, wants to do well, and takes great intention in. And so that's why I think that additional time is really necessary so far.
So as the sponsor of that resolution, I really appreciate the care and diligence that both the task force and you, Ryan, are taking with this work. It's a weighty job to do, and please do all your due diligence. I very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Vince and Ryan. And I think that the additional meetings shows the level of commitment by the task force, and also the engagement of community too, because the initial list that came in from community was like 174 names, I believe. And then there's been more names submitted with the last round of public comments. So community is super involved with this, and because of the level of involvement, it shows like the thoroughness that needs to happen with looking through all these names. And the extra time, I think, was really stressing the task force out a little bit with the 7 meetings, and so having some more time and I know has been appreciated. And I didn't name anybody on the task force intentionally because I don't know if that's I don't know if that's out there or not, but yeah. But everybody's doing a great job, and I think of you often, Vince, as the resolution sponsor, and think you would be really proud of the work and know how much effort you put into that resolution. And so just want to let you know that too.
Thank you, Lou. Really deep appreciation for you for representing the board as a liaison. to the task force and for the work of the task force and community members who are providing their inputs. I've been in contact with several districts across the state and other states as well, working on similar work of renaming schools. We're doing a really good job in terms of community engagement, in terms of making sure everybody is heard, and the educational opportunities for our children while we're going through this process is phenomenal. So thank you for this work. Next up, I think, Sarah, you had your hands up for an update or just for a question. All right, so any further updates from school board members? Well, I do have an update for Corvallis Hands Across Corvallis, which is the foundation typical breakfast. So I'm not going to ask on you by show of hands who did sign up or not, but please do sign up. Everybody is invited from community members, school board members, and our guests as well. I encourage everybody to sign up to Hands Across Corvallis. If you go to the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation website, there is a link to register, and it would be a really great opportunity to listen to the updates from educators and students around distance learning. I'm not sure if you had that in your updates, Ryan.
I did not, so
Okay.
that's okay.
Good. So it's really going to be an exciting opportunity. Usually we have the breakfast within the confinement of the Corvallis High School cafeteria. It's a very spacious place, but usually it is full. So I expect us to have more audience because we're doing it virtually. So it's unfortunate we're not going to have the meal together in the same place, but it's fortunate that we can have more community members involved and engaged in the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation work. And special thanks and gratitude to Director Therese Jones and also the foundation chair, Ashley Chavez, for a couple of the highlights that were recently shared about the work of the foundation. So I just want to share those updates from the foundation. They're doing great work supporting our district. If there is no further questions or updates from school board members, we'll go next with the superintendent's reports.
All right, so just a couple of things I wanted to highlight for you tonight. The first one is Winter Smiles, which is an event that the CHS leadership students take on. This is the 16th year of Winter Smiles. And I've asked Krista Schmieder to come tonight and talk a little bit about the support of the community and gratitude for the community in supporting this ongoing project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Krista.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm at CHS still, and I'm so thankful that Ryan was able to let me do this near the beginning of the board meeting, all except for, I think, a 5-hour nap my mom and I went home for last night. We've been here since yesterday at 5 a.m. So I'm excited. I'll watch the school board later. But I promise, Ryan, I promise. But Winter Smiles is a program where families in our district reach out through their counselors, and we find an anonymous way for community members to provide clothing, food gift cards, assistance with rent, and then ideally some toys and things for their kids that are either at CHS or siblings that will someday be at CHS. And this year it's nice because we have kids from both middle schools, I think 3 or 4 of our elementary schools, and both high schools, and I think our alternative school too. So it's really impacting a lot of students and a lot of families. And we have never had as much need as we've had this year. We've never had as many families reach out to us, at least in the 10 years I've been helping. I don't know about the first 6. But we've also never received such an outpouring of gifts and generosity from the community. And I was just really overwhelmed. So I just wanted to share with Ryan. And since I'm at school and technology is so awesome, I can share some of the wonders of the community's donation. So all of these boxes are going to local families, and each family has at least one gift box and at least one food box and about $200 of food gift cards for their families to spend over the winter break. And it doesn't only just go in this hallway. Oh, there's my mom. She's the machine. I would like to thank Ross Durfelt and Elaine Markley for getting 2 bikes for some of our kids so that when we get to come back to school, they can come back with their helmets and locks. I still have a little mountain of presents to wrap in there. Sorry, I'm making you nauseous, guys. And then Mr. Duvall, sorry I used your room. You weren't here, so I decided to take over. Please forgive me. It'll be clean by tomorrow. I would also like to thank Sal Munoz, our athletic director and assistant principal, because he got 10 of our sports teams to adopt a family. And so that took a huge burden off the leadership class because they did everything, including the wrapping and getting the gift cards. And I would like to thank our custodian, Jeff, because he's made sure the space has stayed clean and safe and secured every night. And my mom, and Becky Weeks at Transportation. She has a fleet of Spartan helpers that are going to come tomorrow morning and fill up our school buses and make all the deliveries tomorrow. So it's going to be super cool. Oh, and Lauren Reed, one of our teachers who donated a queen size bed for a mom so that all of her kids can snuggle with her and she actually still has space. So anyway, just thank you everyone. And I'm super touched and thank you. That's it.
So thank you to Krista and to Donna. And everybody who donated to Winter Smiles. It's definitely an appropriate name and a significant name this year as we continue to move through a difficult winter. So thanks again to Krista and all the leadership kids and families that helped to contribute. I was there earlier today and there were a lot of presents left to wrap. So I think that they're making good time as far as I can tell. So
well, Ezra Hart, he'll give it a report later. I think he wrapped about half of them. So, and we had some alumni come back and take boxes home to wrap. So it was really special. So thank you guys.
When I was there today, Ezra was so focused on wrapping, I don't know that he even knew I walked in the room. So he's making good progress as well. So thanks to everybody for that. Another update I wanted to provide, it's a personal one. And so board members, you probably remember about a year ago, I had a mentor who was here visiting as part of the National AASA Superintendent's Program. And I just wanted to let you know that I've concluded that program after 2 years. So thank you to your support and participation. One of the things I take away from that is ongoing relationships and connections with superintendents across the country. We continue to meet on a monthly basis, especially around COVID and school opening and lessons learned. And it's been a really valuable group for me to spend time with because it gives me a national perspective, which I really appreciate. So that program is complete. And again, thank you for your support in allowing me to participate over the last 2 years. So I wanted to share that with you. Also tonight, Jason Hay, the Assistant Superintendent from LBL ESD, as well as board member David Dowry are here to share a little bit of information with you about the support that our ESD has been providing us. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason and David.
All right, Superintendent Noss, thank you. And Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to address the board. As you're probably already aware, Lynn Benton Lincoln Education Service District serves educational agencies, districts, and schools across the state, but primarily serving our 12 school districts in our 3-county area. We actually have within these districts over 90 schools with approximately 37,000 students. Our board includes 7 members, and Mr. David Dowry is joining me here this evening, as Mr. Noss had said. And he serves the geographic area that includes the Corvallis School District. So the ESD provides a variety of services falling mostly in 4 core service areas: special education, technology support, school improvement, and administrative support. I won't go into greater detail tonight, but I'd like to refer you to 3 documents that I shared prior to this meeting that I'm sure that you can access. And thank you, Ryan, if you can share those. Where you can find additional information about our work. 2 of the shorter documents we used in our fall visits, and 1 much longer document is our recently created 2021-2023 local service plan. And then I'd just like to conclude by thanking Superintendent Noss for his service as chair of our 3-county Valley Coast Superintendents Association. Super Noss's leadership is strong, and his kind and facilitative approach has allowed us to have better conversations about LBL services and for better regional approaches to educating students, especially during this challenging time right now. So on behalf of our board and our superintendent, Tanya Everest, thank you.
Likewise, thank you for the opportunity to participate in your school board meeting. I do want to thank Sarah and Tina for volunteering to be budget committee members for the ESD. Thank you very much.
And thanks to you two for being here this evening and joining us. Those documents that Jason referenced will be added into board book attached to the superintendent's report. So you'll be able to access them as well as community. So we'll make sure that those get included in the revision to what we have currently in the agenda on board book. Two other things I wanted to briefly share with you. The first one is thinking about one of the things that we do is we go back and look at what sorts of reports did we bring forward the year before in terms of the superintendent reports, because some of the things are seasonal. And one of the things that's seasonal is inclement weather. And so while we are not oftentimes thinking about school closure right now because of inclement weather, we also want to remind people that that does happen. And in this case, we would still go ahead and continue on with that day of instruction. So we won't have school closures due to inclement weather. However, there is the potential that we would have an outage of power, which would then create a school closure. And so in those cases, we're going to continue to communicate out through the formats and the forums that we have, through our auto dial and those other pieces. So we just want you to think about it, sort of a little bit of a mind shift this year about what it means to have a school closure. So to our board representatives, I'm sorry, we're not going to call a snow day, but we might call a power outage day. So that's going to be the way that it looks for this school year. So wanted you to all be aware of that because sometimes questions arise, and this report is also something that we share out with the community. So that's one update. And the final update is to let you know that on Tuesday of this week, we did our second bond sale. And so as you remember, we did an initial bond sale of $160 million regarding construction. We waited on 40 million because we knew that you had to spend it out in a specific period of time, and the scope of construction did not allow us to do that amount of construction all at once. So we did two bond sales. So as I've shared before, Moody's continues to give us a strong AA2 rating, which is the third highest rating, one step below the state of Oregon. So we can't go any higher because our funds come from the state. So anyhow, so strong rating. And so we went for a sale. And so we were very successful. Our bonds were highly sought. And so we were able to sell our bonds and also add a premium of $10 million in that sale. So that allows us access to $50 million, which will strongly support all of the bond promises that have been made in completion of our bond work. So exciting news to share with you tonight on that front as well. So we started with Winter Smiles and we ended with a bond sale. So I think, my superintendent report is done for tonight. How's that?
Well, thank you, Ryan. Really great work that you're working on, and really good to hear. Just to follow up real quick on the sale of the bond, for those who might be just tuning in and hearing that we saw the bond, parts of the bond, this will not change the tax rate at all. We're still within the limit.
Yeah, and we will have a presentation by Dale Kuykendall from Wenaha, as well as Kim Patton tonight with a bond construction update where they'll touch on that. And also Olivia has several topics tonight on the financials. And so again, she'll be able to answer questions as well. But to reiterate, yes, it stays within that $1.98 per thousand that was agreed upon at the beginning of this process. And
Wonderful.
supported by 2/3 of our voters.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you. Do we have any questions for board members regarding the superintendent's reports or from our students' representatives? As a reminder, use the virtual hand. Vince, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, first, I'd like to say that it's comfort to know that you will not be out at 4:30 in the morning assessing the iciness of roads. So that's good to know. But I just immense congratulations to you and the bond team on the sale of the second batch of bonds. Just that is tremendously good news, particularly under these fiscal times. But that's really good news for fulfillment of our bond promise.
One of the key factors has been your board policy around reserves and the way that the board has made conservative decisions around finances and has a history of doing that. That makes a significant difference when we go to a ratings call with Moody's and are able to explain that fact. So again, thank you to the board for maintaining that conservative stance in maintaining resource for a rainy day and how that is seen with really positive light from the rating agencies.
And we can see how that returns dividends in what we can do for kids. So
Totally.
all great news. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vince. Any other questions? Calvin, I saw your hand go up momentarily. Are you good? Awesome. So, well, next up is the student representatives report. So I want to welcome you back. And let's start with Corvallis High School representatives, Ezra Hart and Kristen Moon. Do we have a report from Corvallis High School?
Yeah, we do. Our first thing is that our first virtual club fair is occurring on January 6th. That'll hopefully engage the freshman class a little bit more with everything being online and hopefully help the clubs get a bit more participation and activity. And Ezra has some other reports.
Yeah, we have dealt with an incident just a little bit ago with spam emails. Some students had figured out how to make mass email chains and send that to the entire student body. But we have disabled that feature for the students for the time being, and we are talking with those students. But on a higher note, I just want to thank everyone who supported the Winter Smiles project again, because it's absolutely amazing. I know you guys got to see it through the video, but it's crazy how much support and how generous the community has been.
Ezra, I think you cut off a little bit. Could you repeat shortly after you talked about the spam emails? We couldn't hear you.
Yes, after the spam emails, we had met with the students involved and we cleared that up. And then I was just sending a huge thank you to everyone who supported and was a part of the Winter Smiles project, because it was really amazing what's being done right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it appears to be maybe the internet was unstable from my end. So thank you so much. Crescent Valley High School, Kate Volz and Calvin Karlski.
Yeah, so we also, this is just, I didn't mention this, but that reminded me, I think we're having a club fair too, so that's fun. Hopefully that goes well, because some clubs can go virtual, so that's kind of exciting. So student government has been participating a lot in activism this year at CV, including publishing a recent equity survey to work on curriculum improvement, creating an equity presentation to present at Sheldon, which they're doing in January, working to support students' mental health through community outreach and attending staff meetings, working on a sexual health and sex education campaign, and more. And Calvin has more to talk about, so over to him.
We've also had an amazing holiday drive this year, raising over $5,000 for CV families in need. And so huge thanks to everyone who participated in that and worked on that. Core Council has been organizing various virtual events like trivia and game nights to help engage the student body. Again, as I said before, major fundraiser has been the holiday drive earlier in the year. However, there was monetary support organize and a donation for drive for the victims of the Oregon wildfires. So another huge thanks to everyone who participated in that. Athletics and other events don't really have much to report. They've largely been postponed. The orchestra and Corvallis Youth Symphony are ongoing online. The band will be next semester.
And then brief update, because I have to talk about it because it's very near and dear to my heart, is speech and debate. So so the Corvallis speech and debate team has at various online tournaments over the course of the year placed first and third in novice parliamentary debate, third in novice Lincoln Douglas debate, first in open parliamentary debate, finaled and placed first in impromptu speaking, finaled in poetry, placed first in novice informatory, finaled in novice radio, and placed second in original oratory. So go speech and debate, something we can do online.
Wonderful. So with that, I would like to go to College Hill, and I see Jesse Martin is here from College Hill. Is that correct?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, this is my first year on the school board, and I have never been in leadership. So I'm very new to this stuff, and I see that my other representative isn't here, but I would like to say that College Hill did get enough donations and enough money to be able to send out Christmas gifts for every single student and things like gift cards, food, and that was really awesome. I talked to a lot of students, and it actually really made their day. It felt like Christmas came early. A while back, we had an incident where people were getting into our Zoom meetings and not saying some not so kind things, people who weren't from our class, but we stood by making it so the teachers have to allow certain students into our class, but it hasn't happened since then, so that's good. But that's about it that I have for College Hill.
Thank you so much for your update, and excited to be working with you for this year. Do any of our board members have a question for our students representatives?
I wish Sunita was here, but I have not heard from her.
No problem. Vince?
Yeah,
So my question is for the CV team or representatives. You mentioned a survey on curriculum aimed around topics of equity. And maybe this is also a question for the superintendent. You know, curriculum is the purview of the board, and we approve curriculum. And I'm just curious, can that information find its way to the board in some form when that surfaces or when that survey is complete? I'd be really curious to hear what students had to say.
Definitely. It's actually, we just published it, like teachers were going to put it to their classes today. So I think we've gotten like 250 responses now, 220, 250, and the responses have been really interesting. So definitely when we have got that into like usable data form, we will share that with you. Probably that would be at the next board meeting. I will definitely bring that when we have all of the information for that. Myself and the sustainability coordinator for CV are on a core council subcommittee, as well as Calvin is too, and a couple of other members specifically centered around equity. And me and Bianca are working on the specifically curriculum stuff. So we will definitely like involve you guys in that, because, you know, my role actually is perfect for that. So I'm excited about that. And I will definitely let you guys know updates at the next meeting.
Thank you very much. I would direct you back to the superintendent and just run that through him, and so that whatever we get is appropriate for the board. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. It was great to hear about the debate team. It's nice to have something that can happen during a pandemic. I was wondering, and maybe this is a question for Ryan too, and we've gotten updates on when we anticipate sport seasons to happen and things like that. And I was just wondering what kind of opportunities we've had for kids who are involved, who are involved in other activities like theater or other things. Is there any work being done so that those kids can do their thing too?
So let me bring back a report to you next month and share a little bit of information about that. When we did our SIP presentations last month or I guess it was earlier this month, last week actually, time flies, with our middle school and high school principals, we didn't really touch on that aspect quite so much. So I think that's something that we could definitely bring some more information to you around.
Yeah, thanks. I just would like to know what else is happening.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Next up is Jay.
I just want to say, first, it's very nice to see you. This virtual stuff is not fun without really having students, so thank you. I just want a couple sentences from any one of you, or all of you. Could you give us kind of read on how things are for you as a senior and thinking about next steps with virtual school year halfway almost through? Can you give us a couple sentences on either your own experience or what your friends are doing with respect to next steps? Any struggles or anything that you can share?
Any of
Well,
our...
I'm not a senior, and Calvin isn't either. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but that's what I would say, I guess.
I'm wondering if, Jay, are you curious about just what it's like to be an online student as a high schooler? Maybe to expand that question.
Exactly, or if, yeah, that's wonderful too. I can't imagine being an online student, but yeah, any thoughts you might want to share or anything? If Ezra, are you a senior? I don't remember.
Yes, I am a senior and I can speak a little about that. It's interesting because it does make like the idea of next steps a lot scarier, just because there isn't that like, I can go into our Beyond CHS and be like, what do I do for this? I have to send an email and I'm like kind of waiting for that response. But in a lot of ways, our staff has kind of been just a lot more aware of that. And so it's kind of helped us bridge that anxiety. But I mean, other than that, it's still just, I feel like kind of senior nerves, the kind of the same amount as if I was in person.
Yeah.
Kristen Moon, want to say something?
Yeah, as like speaking to more of the senior part, it does very much feel like we're having some kind of Zoom fatigue. Like cameras are going off more and more by the day, and like I know the common consensus is that rather than an urge to be in classrooms altogether, a lot of what we're missing is like the social aspect of school, because it feels as if it's almost winter break, but there's no football games or dances or any sort of the classic high school interactions. And I know that the freshman class must also be feeling a lot of that.
Good. Last question from Sarah, and then we have to move on because we're a little bit over time now. You're good, Sarah? Okay,
No,
good.
I just forgot to take my hand down.
Okay, wonderful. So next item is public comment. So I'll be opening the public comment period. And I just want to check in with our speakers. I'll be asking on you to speak after I read the script. So our first speaker is Dr. Mike Huntington. Are you available?
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
So I'll read the script and then I'll give you the floor. So speakers may offer objective criticism of the district operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning individual district personnel. Complaints shall be handled in accordance with board policy KL, which is available online. The board chair has the right to terminate a speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. I will alert you when you have 30 seconds with a small knock like this. And when your time's up, I'll do another knock. Following your comments, the board will have up to 3 minutes to ask clarifying questions. So right now, you have 3 minutes, whenever you're ready to speak.
Members of the board, Vice Chair Sammy and Chair Adams, come to you representing myself and Mid-Valley Healthcare Advocates. Thank you for considering the proposal we bring to you. I am Michael Huntington, a retired physician who has lived in Corvallis since 1984. My wife, Carol, was a music teacher in the district for 20 years. Our 2 children benefited from a wonderful education here. One is now a nurse in Denver, the other a construction management business owner in Dana Point, California. I'm fully aware that we and our children were fortunate to have healthcare when we needed it. Our kids would not be in the positions of success that they are in had they been without healthcare or the quality of education they received. Sarah, the nurse, had asthma that, if not controlled, could have taken her life or her opportunity to thrive. But for the luck of the draw, she was and is now not in the 1/3 of our population that cannot access adequate health insurance or health care. My interest in the universal health care began about 20 years ago as I was nearing the end of my career as a radiation oncologist. Patients were coming in with advanced cancers at a time we were getting better at diagnosing cancer early. You probably know what was happening. Weight loss, pain, shortness of breath, pretty worrisome, especially in the middle of the night. But the fear of cost can be even more worrisome. Patients would wait months and finally be forced to come to the ER because of a crisis they couldn't ignore any longer. That's how I got acquainted with the ER docs. We would be unable to control the cancer. And as if the emotional stress of fighting cancer were not enough, patients would face the added stresses of financial hardship, sometimes loss of home, unbearable. A nurse overheard this conversation between the patient and his wife in an exam room. They say I have stage 3 lung cancer and that I need chemotherapy and radiation therapy. They offer no guarantee of success. I'm going to refuse because I don't want to leave you and the kids homeless. Our healthcare system should be called a sick care system because the finances that sustain it are generated by treating sickness. Incomes for hospitals and care providers depend on us getting sick or injured. The absurdity of that has come to light during the pandemic. 80 hospitals have closed. 20% of our hospitals have closed because they have not been able to earn the usual income from surgeries and other procedures, just at a time when we need those hospitals the most. The existing system is really causing havoc in all aspects of our lives because of its unnecessary complexity and cost. This is why we are here and hope that many voices, including yours, will let our legislators know we want everybody in, nobody out, publicly financed universal health care for our students, school staff, and all Oregonians. Incidentally, there will be a virtual town hall on Oregon's efforts to achieve state-based universal health care on Wednesday, January 6th. Dr. Junkins will be one of the 5 panelists. The town hall is sponsored by Mid-Valley Healthcare Advocates, League of Women Voters, Casa Latinos Unidos, NAACP, Corvallis Albany, Rural Organizing Project, and the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition. If you want to join that, go to mvhca/town-hall. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Huntington. And I appreciate your input. Is there any questions for Dr. Huntington? Vince?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mike, for coming and speaking to the board. And you and I have had numerous conversations about universal health care. And I would just like, can you reflect briefly on your experience on, what the impact has been on families and particularly children? When you were practicing as an oncologist, what was that impact on children that you observed as a physician? And then I would also ask, would you please send the link for the summit to the board?
Yes, I will. In my practice, very few of our patients were children, but of course, the adults, many of them did have children, and they faced this very unbearable question that you just heard the little story of, leaving your children or your family without adequate finances or even a home. This is still happening. It's happening every day. So I'm don't know if that gets close to answering your question, Chair Adams.
Yeah, it really does, and thank you for speaking to that. I strongly support universal health care for Oregon, and I appreciate you coming and speaking to the board. By the way, Sammy is the board chair. I'm no longer on the leadership team.
Okay, thank you, Chair Sammy. Yeah.
Thanks. Any further questions? Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you really leading the work on this issue. It's very important. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
All right. Next up is Dr. Ed Jenkins, and I would make sure I am sure you heard the script so many times, so I'll save you from that. And the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair Al-Abdullah, and members of the school board administration and other guests in the room. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Once again, I miss my time on the board. I miss all your faces, and you guys are doing fantastic work. So thank you for that. What you have before you is a resolution which obviously many of us physicians are very much behind, which should tell you, quite a bit about the importance of the resolution. But the details of the resolution deserve a little bit of attention, and that is really from the start, the ability of students to learn and benefit from classroom experience depends on good health. This is why a couple of years ago, we created that board goal of wellness. I am proud of a handful of things that I've been part of in my life. 5 of them are my children and my relationship with my wife and family. And the other things are the things I've done civically in the community. One of them is my work on the school board, and that is our equity goal and our wellness goal. The wellness goal very much asks the board to think about and to get behind the resolution that's before you. I just want to, as the co-chair or vice chair of the task force of universal healthcare, I just wanted to bring us back to a couple of parts of the Senate Bill 770, just so that we're all clear on what we're supposed to be doing as a task force. The task force on universal healthcare is established to recommend the design of the Healthcare for All Oregon Plan, a universal healthcare system administered by the Healthcare for All Oregon Board that is equitable, affordable, and comprehensive, provides high quality healthcare, and is publicly funded and available to every individual residing in Oregon. So these are the details which we are presently working on how to deliver on that. The Task Force on Universal Healthcare shall produce findings and recommendations reported to the Legislative Assembly as provided in Sections 6 and 8 of this 2019 Act for a well-functioning single-payer healthcare financing system that's responsive to the needs and expectations of residents in the state. Can you imagine a world where we didn't have to worry about our employees' wellness, where the funds that we had in our district can be shifted from wellness, from funding healthcare to more teachers or paying for more custodians? I remember that, Ryan. I remember talking about how do we get more custodians in our schools, more nurses, more of all sorts of things. So this is why in the various healthcare settings where I've worked and where I've done this advocacy work, including inner city Baltimore, the Navajo Reservation, inner city Salt Lake City, and now here in Oregon, I've seen healthcare access from every possible perspective. And it's not just about, do you have insurance? It's about access to quality care. As Dr. Huntington said, we have individual stories of families that are not able to move from day to day. Imagine what that learning environment is like in those homes. So, resolution before you, happy to answer questions. And again, thank you for the work that you've done for our community, and I miss you.
We miss you too. I want to provide a clarification or request. First, I'll start with the request. If you could, I received that over email, sample language of a resolution, and I would like to ask you if you could send that to the board email so all board members could receive it. So that's the request. And the clarification for fellow board members as a matter of procedure, any resolution can be introduced by school board members by sending it to the chair, and it will be prioritized through the board leadership in a future business meeting for a first reading and then for passage. So with that, I would like to open the floor for any questions for Dr. Edward Jenkins, and we have Vince.
So really just a suggestion. I think, as I said before, I'm already sold on the idea of universal healthcare for the reasons that both of the physicians that have spoke for the board this evening have cited. So I would ask that that we set aside a time to consider the resolution, and also invite back both Dr. Huntington and Dr. Jenkins and other physicians to educate the board more fully on this issue as we consider that and taking it up and potentially giving advocacy to this effort.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions? We have Kate Bowles.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, from the perspective of a student, like, we understand, like, I think CV, at least a lot of the people I know are privileged, but not everyone even in the Corvallis school district has that kind of privilege. And I know OHP only covers like low income communities, but that's not fully, like, it's not everything. And so I know that a lot of people I know would very much support this. I do as well. So I just wanted to say, like, thank you for coming to talk to us, and it's a great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Point of clarification, and since we do have both speakers here, I'll open it for either one of you to speak about it. I just want to clarify, the resolution you're advocating for is for a Senate bill statewide. It's not only for a district or for a municipality. This work to be effective, you're asking for us to advocate for it on a state level. Is that correct?
Dr. Huntington, you're muted. If you want to respond first.
Yes, primarily for the state level, but ultimately the national level would be very desirable, even more desirable. But starting with the state level,
there have been other efforts. Vermont, Colorado, New York, California is trying it. All of them have come close, have had problems along the way. Oregon could be the first state to get it absolutely right, to be the model for a national plan. And what's unique about what our group is doing, never mind we have input from every possible perspective you can think of, but what's unique about this is the current setting in which we are doing this. We're doing this virtually, like we are doing this now in a pandemic where we are all in the same storm, and you've heard this. We're not all in the same boat, and we have extremely disproportionate outcomes. And so that provides a very credible, relevant, and urgent layer of momentum for the work that we're doing. And so we're going to put forth what I think is a really exciting proposal. It will require you and your constituents and your influence to convince the voters that this is what we need.
Well, thank you very much. Any further questions? Seeing none, I want to thank both public comment speakers, and the public comment period is now closed. Thank you very much. And next item on the agenda is action on matters discussed in the December 10th, 2020 executive session. Board members, you do have a sample language and explanatory document that was uploaded shortly to the agenda for sample motions. Do I hear any motion? Director Jay Conroy.
I hereby move, in accordance with our board policy KLAR, for the board to not hold a hearing with regards to the complaint from Ginger Larkham dated November 9, 2020, to review the findings and conclusions of the superintendent, thus making the superintendent's findings decision final.
I second the motion.
All right, it's been moved by Jay and seconded by Vince. Do I hear any further discussion on the motion? See none, no further discussion. We will now enter into a roll call vote on the motion stated. Director Vince Adams, what's your motion? What's your vote?
Aye.
Director Jay Conroy, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Sarah Finger McDonald, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Therese Jones, what's your vote?
Teresa's not.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Director Tina Baker, what's your vote?
Since I wasn't in attendance, I abstain.
Thank you. Director Luhoy White Bear, what's your vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Passes 5 with 1 abstention. All right. So next item on the agenda is an educational update from our teaching and learning team.
So we wanted to provide the board with an update as we recognize that we continue to be in a situation where our numbers of related to COVID are too high to move from comprehensive distance learning. We're also wanting to make sure that the community recognizes that we have a plan for bringing students back to school. And so tonight, Assistant Superintendent Harder and Amy Leeson, our elementary coordinator, will be sharing an overview for you so you have a sense of what that looks like. Similar information has been provided to families this evening. We provided a brief PowerPoint with voiceover on the hybrid model as well as health and safety measures. And we want you to have that same information. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time going through several slides talking about what that rollout and phased approach would look like, and also the opportunity for questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Melissa and Amy to walk us through that information.
Thank you. Lindsay, we're ready for the PowerPoint.
All right, thank you. Nice to see everyone tonight. Like Ryan said, this is information that families are getting and hopefully a little bit more detail for you all. And we are able to answer questions at the end. And we wanted to just share with you a little bit about the hybrid plan that has been developed for our elementary team. And those are all of our 8 elementary schools. Lindsay, you can go to the next slide. So it was important for us to start off with this. The challenges that our school leaders are facing, they're not new. And it was important to acknowledge that who our system is built for. And as a board, you know, I'm sure you're hearing from families that this isn't working for them. And we want you to think about who you are listening and hearing from, and to know that inequities we're seeing now have historically been in existence in our system for a long time. And a lot of families have struggled to have access to quality instruction. And because of our deepening work in equity and systems work, we are aware of that and really leaning in hard to see what we're going to do to change the system to work for everyone. So no, I suppose rest assured that inequities are not new to us, and we're working hard around that and building a plan around that. Lindsay, you can go to the next slide. So some things that we know are going on that we want to also just acknowledge that right now the gap is continuing to grow in spite of all we're doing. And I think an example could be, I know of a mom who happens to be able to stay home and sits with her kiddo pretty much the entire day during remote learning. And I also have a family friend whose older sibling is there at home, and that's it. And sometimes they log on and sometimes they don't. And so as much as we're trying to make the system work, we also are seeing this gap continue to grow. We know that COVID-19 is still here for a little while and that there will be disruptions. We will have quarantining that needs to happen. And as we're building our hybrid plan, just keeping that also in the forefront for us. Another key factor is how important consistency is right now for our families, especially our families that are struggling. The more consistent of a plan we can put together and develop, the stronger and more supportive it will be for families. And the key component to all of it is building connection and having that as a priority focus. And then last, I know this isn't news to you, but our families and students of color are the most affected by COVID-19. I think a recent stat I heard from our state is our Latinx population across the state is about 13%, and yet that COVID percentage is like 28 or 27%. So knowing these types of information has helped our principal team, teachers, staff, exec team build this model that we're going to share with you. So Lindsay, you can go to the next slide. So what did we figure out? And some of you may have heard some of this already, but we'll back to cohorts. We shared this with you early on that we would be building a cohort system. And so we're sticking with that plan, and all of our students that are attending remote with the classroom teacher, not Corvallis online right now, but that are with the classroom teacher at elementary will have 3 cohorts that they're divided into: a Monday, Tuesday, a Thursday, Friday, and then another group of kiddos who can't come into school for one reason or another, high risk of illness, or maybe they did come in and COVID happened, or there needed to be a quarantine, and so then they're out and they're part of that other cohort. And then Wednesdays, we're continuing to keep the schedule pretty much as it is right now, fully remote. And then that's also a deeper cleaning day in between the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday in person. And then Corvallis Online is still an option. We're not really changing anything of that. We're not changing the process. If a family is feeling like they need to transfer to or from that, they need to start with their school principal. So, and remember, this is just elementary. We'll come back, and Nikki will be in my place sharing some model of secondary. So what does the day look like for the students? What we've talked about is that consistency and connection, keeping those two really in the forefront. So all morning, regardless of if you're in cohort A, B, or C, you will have your core instruction focusing on reading and math delivered remotely, very similar to how it's happening right now. So regardless of your situation, you're still going to be able to access that core reading and core math. And then we also won't be asking teachers to teach core reading to a group in person at the school and a different group at home, that this is going to be that consistent thing that can stay until we have a whole different plan. So if you are the cohort that's coming in for the day, after that morning session of reading and math primarily, you would take a lunch break and then come into school. And then the kiddos that are staying home would take a lunch break and then have some asynchronous learning that would happen. And probably a little bit more beefed up than what we're doing right now, but similar to the asynchronous learning that's happening now. And Lindsay, I think you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so another piece that we've taken from success in the past is this concept of a staggered start. We do it typically every year with kindergarten students, and now our plan will be to do this with all students as they enter, knowing, being really intentional about how our students come and what we do with them the first time they're in the building since March, sometimes the first time they're in a building ever in one of our school buildings. We want to make sure it's super successful, not scary, and that everybody feels really good about it. So it will be really small groups that start, like a quarter of the class would come at a time, and then we'd rotate until everyone would get there. So it's a staggered start. Your schools will be reaching out and talking like specific what that means for each individual kiddo, and potentially we'll do the timeline at the very end. So we'll talk about that potential January 18th date at the end. And then I think you can go to the next slide, and Alyssa, you're on.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about our health and safety protocols. I wanted to make sure everyone knows the one thing that I narrated with this slide that we sent home to families is that health and safety procedures are for everyone, and that is true with training and of everybody. So we have created a health and safety training for our staff. We have sent this a version of this health and safety slides that you're going to see home to families. And when our students arrive at school, a lot of what they're going to be doing when they're in the building is learning how to be in the building in this new normal of COVID with 6 feet of distancing and mask wearing and what that feels like with all of those safety protocols in place. So kind of a three-pronged approach for our health and safety procedures. We will continue contact tracing. We'll be helping students to learn about masks and hand washing. We will ensure that there's extra cleaning in classrooms and public areas. And as every building already is, classroom health stations will also be inside classrooms so that teachers can assist with making sure that our buildings are getting disinfected and our classrooms are as well. And for any student who is struggling with this kind of learning, wearing a mask, hand washing, keeping that distance, school teams will be available to support all students to help to follow these health and safety protocols. So we'll do a lot of what we do with students when we're teaching any new behavior: teach, reteach, redirect, and go from there. Next, Lindsay, thanks. Masks are required for all students who are coming into the building and when they're outside, and even when they're outside for recess. The CDC guidelines are very clear about how important it is for everyone to be wearing a mask, and kindergarten through 12th graders are required to have a mask on while they're at school. If students need masks, we have them available. And for some of our students, we are going to be creating accommodations for kids who can't wear masks for different kinds of reasons. It might have something to do with a 504 accommodation or an IEP accommodation or a medical need. All of those kinds of concerns are going to be looked at on an individual kind of case-by-case basis with school teams involved. Next slide. I love this slide, and I have been talking about hand washing for the last 3 or 4 days now as I've recorded a ton of different safety messages for everyone. Wash your hands. We're going to be teaching kids how to wash their hands. Our staff are going to be setting really good examples about washing hands. Everyone is required to wash hands as they enter the building, before and after they eat, and after they use the restroom. We're also going to be teaching and reinforcing what we call respiratory etiquette. So that would be how to cough and sneeze, not on your neighbor, and how you take care of cleaning up after that happens. Next slide. Physical distancing is also critical with regard to managing communicable disease. So when our kids come into the building, they will find 6 feet of distance between themselves and the other student in the classroom. We're going to have a picture in a second of desks that are set 6 feet apart, but we're also going to reinforce 6 feet of distance between individuals as they are walking in the hallway, as they're entering the building. Our custodial staff and facilities maintenance have gone through and created directional paths in our hallways, set out markers so that kids can get a visual of what it means to be 6 feet apart from someone else. And whenever we can, we're going to have our kids walking outside from one place to another instead of using interior hallways. Last slide. So this is a picture of Adams, right, Amy? I think it's Adams Elementary. This is a picture of a classroom setup. So classrooms are going to look different, and that's going to be kind of hard for some kids, I think, who have been in a building before. And that is why we really want to focus on how we can support our students to understand why things look different and how we respond in this new normal. So seating will look like this. Kids are going to be staying at their desks for workspaces and also for eating. So it'll feel a little bit different, but we are preparing for what that's going to look like as far as supporting kids throughout. And our last slide, Amy's going to talk to you a little bit about timeline.
Yeah, and Ryan, feel free to jump in with any of this. So continuing to watch the metrics is really where we are. And what will happen when we come back is our elementary principals will hold a kindergarten session for kindergarten parents to just review this similar information that went home in the PowerPoint and that we're talking with you tonight, and maybe a little more specifics about their school, and checking in with families starting that week and then the following week about, what's your plan? Here's your cohort group. Are you ready to come when the metrics allow? The following week we'll continue to watch the metrics, and all along we'll just continue with schooling as it's been. Like there's no change will happen for anybody until they start into that hybrid model. The soonest we anticipate that to be able, we want to give teachers transportation and metrics. It takes a couple weeks. So the soonest we anticipate is the week of January 18th. And again, that'll just be us watching metrics and saying, yay, it's a go, or no, we're not quite ready, but we have a plan as soon as it is, and families will know a couple weeks in advance. And then we'll stagger it. So it'll be kindergarten, and then first grade families will be contacted, and then we'll do first grade and then second grade. And I think, Ryan, anything else you want to add before we do questions? I think that was the last slide.
Yeah, a couple things. The first is that I want to take a moment of appreciation for Amy for the work that has happened as we've talked about how to account for so many factors in this. So things like, how do we maintain learning time when we've been in a situation where kids are in synchronous learning right now? How do we do that while we're still doing cohorts and bringing kids back into the building? How do we make sure that we have a plan that's intentional and ready to go, but also won't be put into place until our metrics have gone down? We're looking to be in a situation where we have less than 100 cases over 2 weeks per 100,000. Our experience of what we had this week was 300. So we have a ways to go. And so while we now have a plan that I think is a really well-intentioned, thoughtful plan, we also know that we can't implement that plan until numbers go down in our community. And so sometimes I think when people see that there is a plan, it causes folks to feel like, now I can have pause because I know what the plan is. And other times people will feel like that means this is going to happen, and that causes stress and anxiety. So what we've tried to do is say, now just continue to look at the metrics. Those will lead us to reentry. And then once that can happen, these are the steps we're going to take. So again, we've had lots of conversations about how is it going for all of our kids, and how's it going for our kids that have been historically underserved in education. How do we account for that in this model? And so I think that what we've provided is a strong model. And we also know that there'll be a future plan as we continue to move back towards kids being in school on a more frequent basis as we move away from hybrid. But as of right now, we feel like this is a strong plan for our first approach to kids coming back in our elementary schools.
Thank you, Ryan. Sorry, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was just going to iterate the point of right when we first started, revisiting the hybrid plan that we had started back in March and April. One thing I heard from our teachers was, I feel like I'm finally getting into a swing of things. Like it's starting to work. And now we're going to have this, this all of a sudden shift to only 2 days that I get to see my kids. And so really continuing with the momentum was a really key component and a reason why our morning reading and math and giving teachers permission to dig in and like get good at this and continue to get better at it, because this is how it's going to be for a while. And I think that also felt a little reassuring, like, okay, I'm not going to have to change how I teach this because we're finally figuring it out after, 6 weeks in it.
All right, we have a set of questions, but I'm going to ask a question, and I know the answer is not a single number, but how long did it take you to have this plan in place? A day, a week, a month?
Let's just say there's
by hours of work that Amy and her team have done. I think that would be the measurement.
And I want to acknowledge that. Sorry, go ahead.
Just lots and lots of hours over weeks and multiple iterations and evolutions after eliciting feedback and hearing, this might work, this won't work, and frequent changes. So,
and I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you for the diligent work. The pandemic is by definition a moving target, and having a robust plan and reaching to this plan, I'm sure it took you hundreds of hours, and also the flexibility to say, this is not going to work anymore, and make sure that we adapt. So thank you for this really the resilient planning. Much appreciated. Vince, and then Lou, and then Jay. Vince?
So this transition to hybrid represents a change in working conditions for our staff. And so it's a topic that's being negotiated, an MOU. And as liaison to the negotiating team for the board, it's my responsibility to report. And I have to say that this work is just been incredibly complex and challenging. Just balancing the desire to get back into school and yet be safe. Nevertheless, I have to say that this work has been conducted collaboratively and with the highest degree of integrity and care. Teachers, principals have been coming in at the end of their day, and the leadership team has been working tirelessly to make this happen. And I also have to call out Amy Leeson, who has done just an extraordinary job of developing, multiple schedule scenarios, and also advocating for our children and families with the greatest need. She has consistently helped the team keep students at the center of this work. So just bravo to Amy Leeson for this work. I also want to say thank you to Superintendent Noss and the rest of the leadership team just for consistently emphasizing and sticking to a metered and phased approach that has prioritized care and connection for our kiddos and, safety for children and staff. Just an exemplary job. And once again, I find myself very grateful that I get to live in this community and serve this district on this board. It's really been a privilege and a humbling experience to walk alongside you as you've been doing this work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Lou?
Yeah, similar. It was just some sincere appreciation for all the thought and effort and prioritization that went into this plan. It's really amazing to see that acknowledgement of who's impacted the most by COVID-19 and who's left behind a lot, and how this is showing like what's being experienced by a lot of students from various backgrounds for quite some time is being experienced by most of the community at this point. And so I really appreciate that focus and upholding the values of having an equity lens to leading this plan. And I noticed that you all kept the core the same, which is really important, right? Like to make sure that that is the center of like consistency. So if things do change, students are used to having that core staying the same. And having the afternoon time be more where there's the health and community and everything, I think really reflects what was shared by the student reps earlier about what's being missed by students the most is those connections. it's not necessarily the learning in the classroom. Of course, everybody probably misses being able to do that too and having questions answered right away and everything. But I feel like that was brought up earlier by the student reps and how that seems like it's reflected in this plan, at least for the younger kids. And I know, at least for my elementary age child in the home, that is what she's missing the most too, is that connection with other students. And I didn't really have a question. It was more of an appreciation for all the care. I guess I could frame a question. And I think when a lot of the feedback that we're getting from families and community is like a real emphasis in getting everybody back in person, and the expectation that that would look immediately like it did pre-COVID, where we have class all day, every day for all the students. And I feel like there's that that consistent ask for that. And so how would you address that? Like how would you reemphasize the importance of we're following the metrics and doing this phased approach? And how would you all respond to that one? That consistent question that comes up to the board, I feel, from folk.
I'll go first. So one of the things that I think people may not be thinking about is they have seen this model and they've seen what we've done traditionally. And what you heard from our secondary principals last week was that they have concerns about a hybrid approach where half the kids are coming into the classroom and half the kids are staying home based on the way that they're providing synchronous learning now. And so there is some cost in whatever model we bring forward. And so what people are asking for right now, there is cost associated with it in terms of the time of synchronous learning versus the time of independent learning. And so I think that that's the piece that people sometimes miss. And I think that that's why this model with that core instruction that maintains that synchronous aspect for all kids is so important. If we went to 2 days in person and 2 days at home, those 2 days at home would be 2 days completely asynchronous. And you would miss out on that opportunity to start the day with your cohort, with your classmates, and get core instruction throughout the week rather than 2 days of the week. And I think that's where people sometimes think we should just jump right back into the way it was. We can't jump back into the way it was. So what's that middle ground, and what's that approach? And I think that's probably what the community needs to continue to think about and understand as we create these models. Thank you. Anything, Amy and Melissa, you'd want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think that that's exactly right. I also think that this model really respects the learning and the hard work that our teachers have done to switch into a comprehensive distance learning model. And like Amy was saying before, we listened to them when they said, we're just getting good at this. How can we keep this going? And this model offers that opportunity for teachers to continue that learning.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would add is this is what we do when kiddos come back. We're going to be talking about what unfinished teaching and learning happened, and we're going to be talking about how we accelerate all students. And so even though there's this fear of so much learning loss and my kids behind, I just would have people pause and think about what good things can have happened over this time. And just because we're not learning the way that we've always traditionally done it doesn't mean everything is lost and everything is bad. So shifting the narrative to what have we learned and how are we going to be able to walk away and enter in a new situation even better.
Thanks, y'all. I appreciate that. And even thinking about the instruction plans that came through over the last couple months of really highlighting actually what was in place exactly before wasn't working either. And there's a lot of really innovation and some exciting changes when we do go back to full in person. So I think that's important to think about too, is like that wasn't working either. And I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. And before I call on Jay, I want to remind our students representatives, you're always welcome to raise your hand and have questions or comments if you would like to. Next up is Jay.
So I have a couple of detailed questions. First, were parents sent something tonight that we might also get a copy of or get sent same week so that we could see it?
Yep.
Yeah, Ryan, don't you send usually that same message out to the board? So you'll get that.
So then some details, just for my curiosity. I noticed in the afternoons, what you described, kids will be with a teacher on Monday, Tuesday. Where will that group be on Thursday and Friday? What will they be doing in the afternoon?
That time will be asynchronous. So they will, the way that our schedule is set up, they'll have all morning with their teacher, and then we kind of are going to say goodbye to half the class. Goodbye, go get ready to go to school. And the kiddos that are staying at home that day will have an additional 15 minutes to 20 minutes with the teacher to say, okay, today, this afternoon, after we get off, here are the things you need to work on. Here are the programs we need. This is at your house. And just have a time to really intentionally set them up for the work that they need to do those days, but it'll be independent. There's a chance that there might be some small group stuff, but for the most part, we're planning that to be asynchronous, independent time.
Lastly, for the people who are watching or maybe following up, a lot of what you have designed, or some of what you have designed, is driven by a state standard, the 6 feet, for instance, or I'm thinking a lot of it is got limits on it because of what the state says you have to do, right?
Right. All of the health and safety protocols involving the number of kids who can be in a classroom, how many people can be in a space, all of that is driven by the ODE, Ready School Safe Learner Guidance.
And then did you all have to submit some sort of a description of this plan to the Department of Ed for approval, or are they just saying, just follow our rules?
We have to submit something called an operational blueprint to ODE, also to the Benton County Health Department. We have so far submitted 2 of those as far as revisions. We submitted our first comprehensive distance learning only model to, and that was approved. And then when we went to limited in person, we submitted another operational blueprint. And we have, as part of the preparation for a possible return for hybrid in-person instruction, have a third revision to that operational blueprint ready to go.
So my last comment is just thank you. It is unbelievably hard work for you and for teachers and for moms and dads. And so thank you for doing all of that, and just appreciate you greatly. Way to go.
Thank you.
Much appreciation. Vince, you're up next.
So I have a question on behalf of parents. You know, it's very likely that we may go into hybrid and then come out. We don't know what this pandemic is going to do. Can you describe, I know that you've just really blocked this out, but what is your vision for communication with parents so that they can support their students as we transition into hybrid, or goodness, if we have to transition out and go back to comprehensive distance learning? So I know that all the details aren't there, but what's your vision for communication?
Yeah, so I feel like this is stage 2 of a 3-part communication process. Yeah. So last week we let people know that our metrics did not allow us to come back on January 4th, and additional information would come out. Tonight we shared with families information about health and safety, as well as what that hybrid process will look like for our primary age kids. And then when we return, 2 things are going to happen. One is that our elementary principals will have a parent meeting to talk about the details, and each of our kindergarten families will be contacted by their child's school to talk through this process and answer questions. So actually it's really a 4-part process, and this is stage 2. But again, making sure that we have sort of started with broad information, and we'll continue to narrow and focus down to the student and family level.
Great, thank you for that. And I'm sure that allays some concerns for parents. I know it's a tough time right now. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Up next is Sarah, but before I call on you, Sarah, reminding our student representatives, if you want to ask anytime, feel free to do so. And if you want to stick around, feel free to do so. I'm reminded, Ryan, 8 o'clock is the time where we don't hold you to commit further time. If you want to go do your homework or sleep, feel free to do so. Feel free to wave and say goodnight. Otherwise, you're welcome to stick around as well. But we really appreciate your service and representing the student body on the school board. It's very valued. And up next is Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. And I don't know how much homework's going to get done tonight because these kids all have 2 weeks off, as my high schooler has told me several times today.
We should have changed it to 9.
They can sleep late tomorrow. No 9 o'clock Zoom. I don't even know if we have the answer to this or if we're sort of going to see how it goes. But so if kindergarten starts, are we sort of anticipating first grades like a week later? How is this going to roll out?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So we're looking for 2 weeks in the yellow. And then the following week is when we will start with teachers having time to prepare for students to return. And by the end of that week, 2 days of half of cohort B coming in, half on one Thursday and half on Friday. The following week, half of cohort A on Monday and half of cohort A on Tuesday, again, because that's when they fall within the week long term. And then by the end of the week, we would have that full cohort B in place. At that time, that second week, we would start first grade, and they would be a week behind, and that's how we would roll out. Again, we're moving slow because we're moving with intention, and we don't want to create a sense of whiplash for families where they think one thing's going to happen and something quickly changes for them. We have communicated when we've had communication that's been clear, and we've also held back from sharing plans that may change. And so that's really what we've tried to do with our communication channels, but that's the intention. It's a phased approach. Some districts you'll hear say bringing K3 back, and they mean all K3 the same day, the same time. And to us, that doesn't make sense as a way to move kids in with any sort of a safety mindset and approach in place.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah? Ryan, could you speak a little bit to the rationale of prioritizing, not prioritizing it, but yeah, prioritizing in person for K through 3 or KN 1 and 2 over high school seniors, let's say, or middle school? Why are we going from the bottom up?
So that's actually an expectation from the Department of Education to bring K3 back first. And so for us to be anywhere between 50 and 100 cases over a 2-week span per 100,000, K3 are the first kids to come back. And so after we started limited in person, which has allowed us to bring some of our small groups of students back, this is the next phase of reentry.
Thank you. And just as a reminder for community members who might be wondering about red, yellow, green, these are indicators from Benton County metrics.
They are metrics established by OHA, but based on Benton County numbers. And in our message that went home to families tonight, it again highlights where we have been over the last 4 weeks since they changed the metrics on October 30th.
Wonderful. And I really appreciate the commitment that this update will be done on a weekly basis to update the community where we are and what's the soonest possibility given the circumstances.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks. Good. Any other questions, Sarah? Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, just and just for clarification. So as you know, we're now at 300 cases, 100,000. What does that mean for those small groups of students we've been able to bring back? Will we be able to continue to bring them into schools in January, or is that going to be impacted?
The limited in-person groups? Yeah. they will, at this point in time, we continue to meet with Benton County Health Department, primarily with Melissa's lead and our school nurses. And so far, the health department has said maintaining limited in-person is fine. So we're going to continue that into the new year. You may notice over my shoulder, I have some new artwork tonight, and that was actually from one of our limited in-person groups working with Krista Schmieder at CHS. So I had a chance to go visit there today and pick up some artwork from some of our life skills kids who are working there. So, so yeah, that will continue to happen unless we have new advice or guidance that changes for us.
Yeah, and I ran in at the post office into a parent of one of the students who's been able to participate in that, and she said she dropped her off for his, limited in-person time, and he walked in the door and just went, yeah, and you just was, these are my people, I'm here. And so for those kids and access, it sounds like even that limited time is making a really positive impact on that kid, because his reaction getting to come into the building was just ready to go. I'm here. So that was good to hear that it was working for him.
Wonderful. Thank you for the feedback, Sarah. This is great to hear. Vince, you're up next, and due to time constraints, you're going to be the last question.
Well, I'm glad I got the last word on this particular topic, because I really want to highlight what the superintendent said, that the deployment of this hybrid plan is really mediated based on the prevalence of COVID-19 in our community. And so I just want to give a call out to all the people in Benton County, and particularly in the Corvallis community, to take those measures to limit community spread and reduce the presence of the virus in our community, because that's what's keeping our kids out of schools. So please, social distance, wear your mask, and wash your hands. If you don't know how to wash your hands, I'm sure Assistant Superintendent Melissa Harder can help you better understand that. So please, 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 we want to get our kids back in person with our educators. Please do the things that you know you need to do to get rid of this virus, please.
Thank you, Vince. It takes a village. It takes the whole town to go back to school. And I can't say anything more than what you said. You said it right. So thank you. Amy, Melissa, and the team, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your diligent planning. Ryan, I appreciate you highlighting that consistency and giving the parents and families a reliable district that will provide the best education and also a safe education, but also something reliable to expect, because they have lives and they want something stable in their lives. And I hope that this plan is going to provide a little bit more stability to a chaotic life that we're all experiencing.
Yeah,
thank you. So with that, we're going, thank you again, and we're going to go to the bond program updates, and we have Dale and Kim here, so welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Lindsay, do we have the slides? Thank you. All right. Well, shoot, we were reflecting recently how the bond's going. We're kind of at the halfway point from a time perspective, and it was neat to reflect back. If you had a chance to read the written report we turned in earlier for this meeting, it was kind of fun to reflect back. We're seeing challenges and we're facing them, and we're still staying on top. So kudos to the entire bond team. And with that, let's roll into the slideshow. Lindsay? Garfield is kind of in an operational mode, despite all the distant learning. Administrators and some teachers are using their spaces. The West Wing finishes are looking really nice.
you walk into those old classrooms and they feel like they're new, which is neat. The admin addition is all framed. There's sheetrock in there now going up, and the new addition out back is going well. I was out there 2 days ago, and you can walk around the hallways, although the roof structure wasn't on quite yet. Slide. There's an image a little earlier and then a little later of that addition out back. Slide. There's the new restroom. There's the admin on the right, and that's also the admin in the lower center. It's not really going to be orange in the finished product. That's part of the weather envelope. Thanks. And the bottom picture is the glorious new parking lot, which everybody's going to enjoy when they get a chance to use that. And if you notice on the upper right, there's a lot of concrete there. That's part of the big 12-foot wide pedestrian and bike walk, shared walkway, which was a big part of the early design. Slide. Lincoln. If you've driven by it, it's very obvious in the skyline now. Structural steel is all up, and the interior of the building is rapidly turning into rooms all over the place. You'll see some pictures here in a moment. All of the trades are putting their rough-in work in, all the pipes and wire and piping and plumbing work and sprinkler pipes and all that kind of stuff. There's duct work in the building already. Benton County Health Clinic is going very fast. It's predicted it'll be done quite a bit and scheduled to be done quite a bit before the school. The challenge is the site work and making it accessible to the community. So, slide. Here's some views on the second floor. The first slide is before framing, and the second one, we're actually walking in some of the classrooms on the second floor, and they have kind of a sloped ceiling, and that'll help bring light further back into the room. And then just lots of glorious windows. Those are facing south. This is the common, standing on the first floor looking up. All those beautiful wood beams will be finished in the, natural finish in the final product. Slide. Up on the roof. On the right side of that image is, oops, got to see which way I'm looking. Yeah, the right side of that image is where the solar array is going to go. And it mostly fills up that side of the building, which is south facing. And this middle area is where the maintenance staff will be able to access and service their equipment in a much safer manner than they have on other roofs. So it's an interesting design feature that I think will work real nice. And there's that health clinic. As you can see, it's just getting a little bit ahead of the school. It's a wood frame building, and those generally go up a lot faster. This is the kind of the entry area. And if you walk in there, there's a really neat kind of split lobby concept where kids from the school would go in on one side and the general public on the other. And there's kind of a nice way to, control the lobby flow. Husky, if you've driven by there, it's a beehive of activity. You'll see a nice slide showing how busy it is in a moment. Steel is imminent. The concrete footings are essentially done now. Lots of utility work going on, both on site and on the street. Slide. Slide. Lots of conduits, and then some really big storm drainage, as is the case with a lot of projects these days. Slide. And just lots of footings. If you're not too familiar with it, pump trucks are used to deliver concrete across sites, particularly when there's no room to drive. Husky has by far the most crowded site compared to Lincoln anyway. Slide. There's that webcam. I mean, it's just busy. It takes a lot of effort to keep all those people going and coordinated. If you go to those webcams sometime, you can actually observe them live and see the people working, etc. It's really nice. Crescent Valley, yay, the CTE project rebid, saving, $1.5 million from our attempt in April. So that allowed us to move forward. Board approved that GMP last week. Amazing cooperation by all the teaching staff and the custodial staff and Aaron and his team. Just, it was amazing to get those spaces emptied. You'll see some pictures of that here in a little bit. And if you've ever been there, you know how big of a task that is to clear out those spaces. The design team is getting closer to being done with the next bid package for CV, which is a seismic upgrade. And then we're also in the middle of bidding out a fiber backbone enhancement, which will allow the new security system to work a lot better. Slide. There's an empty shop, and all these areas were just completely packed with materials. The shop on the right was the wood shop, just tons of lumber and countless machines. As a woodworker, it all made me drool. So, slide, please. Out back, kind of where the autos area was, and also the ceramics. Lots of hard work to get those spaces cleared and ready for work. This is where the new addition goes, out back here. Slide. I put the big blue arrow on the slide because I wanted you to know that there will be an elevator shaft there. So as the ADA ramp, if it could be called that, off to the left of the image is not to code. And so an elevator was deemed a good ADA solution to get folks up into the second floor of that building. And so they've removed the railing panel, and that elevator shaft will be built in that place. Corvallis High design is really getting close to being done. We're in the throes of talking about the bidding process and when we're going to bring the GMP to you folks. We're probably going to bring a request for some early procurement like we've done on many projects. And that'll allow us to make sure we're not delayed by late deliveries, particularly with the pandemic impacts. New feature, we just received proposals on the new solar array. This will be an added 150 kilowatts, and I forgot to look up how much is up there but my recollection is 170. So we're gonna have a lot of production on that facility. And for those who don't know, the solar work as it relates to the bond is part of the district's obligation to install renewable energy sources. Slide. There's where those arrays will go. On the right, you'll see the light blue, that's the existing array. The new arrays may not be as big as that. This image shows where the proposers could put them. And we intentionally told them they could only put them on metal roofs. We did not want to put them on top of the brand new flat white roof out there. Slide. Sheldon, phase one is pretty much behind us. And then the library is technically part of phase one because it's already bid out. It'll happen next summer. Seismic and mechanical improvements will be bidding quite soon and starting work in the summer. Furnishings are in place in multiple areas. And here's some pictures. That STEAM lab is incredible. If you get a chance, try to get out there and take a look at that. Next, more of the STEAM lab. And you've seen some pictures of this. I don't know if you've seen this one or not, but there's the individual student restrooms again. For those who've experienced the building, they're getting rave reviews. And another shot of the cafeteria, this time with tables. You might have seen the colors last time. Slide. And what we call JAWS, Jaguar, Adams, and Wildcat. The documents, I forgot to update that 50%. They're more than that. We're at about 95%. And the permit submissions will be happening soon. And we'll be going out to bids, in about a month and a half, that kind of time frame. They're going to be staggered a little bit. We're still talking with Fortis about how to bundle it up or bring it to the board separately. So news to come on how we're going to approach the award of those projects. Slide. And I just threw in a bunch of technical drawings. You can move fairly fast through these, Lindsay. All right, new projects are getting pulled out of the drawer and off we go. Harding Center, College Hill, we restarted the design process. If you recall, some work had been done, and you may have even seen some images of it, I can't recall, year and a half ago. At that time, we decided to put it on hold to get more of the other projects bid out. We wanted to make sure of our funding availability to do the work. So it's now been dusted off and it's getting relaunched, and you'll be hearing a lot more about this project over the next several months. Mountain View, pretty much the same process, except that the design had not started at all on this one. We've been dusting off the bond promises, making sure we're all familiar with those. And then continuing the vein of renewable energy and solar, we are going to most likely design a rather large solar array and battery storage for this site, with a goal of creating another resiliency pocket similar to the Lincoln Elementary project. So we're pretty excited about that. And Franklin, these are images I took yesterday. We were walking, and me and our roofing consultant, we were looking at the exterior skin of the building and the roof, etc. And I took those images. I'm fascinated by old historic buildings, and that blue image on the right blew my mind when I looked closely at that curved little piece of roof right above the door. So the things that excite a former contractor. Slide. Bond funds. We haven't talked about this kind of at a real high level. A couple of things to point out. I hope you appreciated the new written report format. It's been tweaked and updated, and we appreciate some citizen input on that. It makes it easier to understand. Instead of just reporting cost to date, which is kind of meaningless by itself, we're now showing cost to date, and how much of a percent that is for the project. And then we're also showing our forecasted costs for each project. And that helps people look at the bigger picture. This top bullet I find pretty interesting. 56% of the project costs have been committed. So either we've completed the work, like some of the early seismic stuff and a lot of the sports fields, et cetera, Sheldon phase 1, that kind of stuff is all done. And then also work that's under contract, which means our cost risk is dramatically minimized. There isn't much room for change there. So we consider those committed costs, which means 44% of the work is yet to be committed and bid. So there's a little bit of risk there. We are doing lots of estimating work. In fact, in some cases, more than one estimator looking at it. Our contractors are helping us, and we've hired outside estimators to validate that some of those numbers. Anyway, 44%. We're feeling like we budgeted in conservatively, and that we'll be able to achieve the bond promises. And that's the point of that second bullet there. And Kim, do you have anything you want to add to that? I've been rambling on rather fast here. If not, that's okay.
I just think the ultimate being that we do anticipate being able to complete all bond promises with our funding available, with all of the bond funds available, with bond premium, interest, the awesome grant, ETO rebates, SB 1149, the seismic grants. It all came together to help us ensure that we can get those bond promises completed.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide. I put this one together. It's somewhat easier to look at than a bar chart that I'm used to using, just to kind of show you when, roughly when the projects are going to deliver from the contractors. Now, for example, Lincoln, it says fall 21. There's still going to be a lot of site work that has to occur after they move into the school. So that's one of the things that Kim and me and the project teams are working on is what is that site going to look like when the kids move in? Where can they play? Where can people park? All those kind of being studied right now. And that statement applies to Lincoln and Husky and boy, probably some others too. Slide. Oh, that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dale. This is great. And we don't have a lot of time, but I want to open the opportunity for some questions. Brief feedback. Thank you so much for the change on the financial summary sheets. I appreciate it. And I think it's great if we can continue it. It seemed to be intuitive for me, but the percentages that doesn't have any header, it is the percentage of paid to date out of projected cost to complete. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, thank you. And we do have questions, and the first question goes to Vince, and then Sarah, and then Lou. Vince.
So first, I'd like to say just thank you. I mean, every bond report always has so much good, and I have lots of notes of things that I really liked, and I'm not going to talk about them because we're short on time. I have a couple questions, but just thank you for, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. It's a really hard time for everybody, and I just really appreciate that. We have this bond work that's so exciting and such a positive influence on our community. So thank you to Wenaha and the bond team for doing this. It's just really, really exciting. I really like the opportunity to reflect. I, look back at this and I think back to 2015, back when we first started planning this and the Road Ahead report and all the bond planning, the planning for the election, and then all the bond work, and just how we've consistently kept students and programming at the center. It's grounded in educational equity. Some of the adjectives I have here is that it's innovative, but the bond team has been diligent and conservative in their execution, and it just has really made it a very secure experience for the board and for the community. You've been consistently transparent with the good and the challenges, and so the bond team has had so much earned trust with this board and with the community. It's just tremendous. And I just reflect back to that pivotal moment when we went out for a project management team, and that risk that the superintendent took on that great company, little company that was gonna run our bond project. So thank you to Superintendent Noss for making that choice. It has really paid off. Wenaha has been a great addition to our team. So I do really like the finance report, the new format. It's just really clear. I think the community is really going to appreciate it. So it just makes it so much more transparent. One thing that popped up that I noticed is that I saw our reserves go down to 2%. From what has typically been 10 to 11%. We've been hovering around in there. And I was just curious where that deflection came from, and can we speak to that real briefly?
Sure. Kim, would you like to tackle that?
And then I would also add, that premium on the bond sale, how might that affect our reserves once all that reconciles out?
I can address both of those real quick. So the reason why the percent of program reserves decreased was because we updated the total projected costs. So if you go back and look, you'll see that the numbers for a lot of the sites where we are early in the work still, we've updated those numbers. And then on the flip side of that, the estimate for the bond premium of the sale that happened this week that's included in this report was $4 million. The premium we received on Tuesday was $10.5 million. So the program reserves is going to go up significantly the next time you see this report.
Great. That's really good news. Thanks for that, Olivia.
Vince, could I add to that the reason our projected costs went up is because we're further along in the design process, and our Fortis has been up, and Girding both have been updating our cost estimates. And so we are evaluating that and projecting our allocations accordingly.
Great, thank you for that. And and you said earlier that you're confident that we're going to be able to meet all our bond promises, and there's been no surprises so far, and we're halfway through. So I have no expectation that there's going to be any surprises as we close this out. I just want one request. There was a mention of furnishings in the report, and there's some decisions that are going to happen there. I would just love to hear about, there's been a lot of innovative use of furnishings in educational spaces. So I would just love to hear about the decisions that were made and the thoughts behind that. So if we could hear from Dr. Quemps, either in the report or in person, that would be really, really great. I think the community would really appreciate that. And then I'd just like to say congratulations on that save of $1.5 million at CV. That's a big win. That's real money. So good job, folks. I'll yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you. Next up is Sarah.
Yeah, there are too many. I can't put down my hand and unmute myself at the same time. So I was really interested in the reflection that happened in this report. It was really interesting to see that as I can't believe we're halfway through. And it was interesting to read the thing we thought or we anticipated as being possible issues, and that mostly it seems like haven't been the issues or have been things that we were able to resolve or were never issues. I was wondering, as you look forward to the second half of this, if there are any of those kind of issues that are still out there that are kind of unanswered, or if we're far enough along now that if things are kind of chugging along.
I would say that we're chugging along pretty good at this point. In our last estimates, we haven't had much surprises, and I feel like we are now a well-oiled machine, and so we kind of know what we're doing. So my hope is there's no surprises, but I can't guarantee that, of course.
I'll throw some comments on top of that. I guess if I'm being honest, I will worry that the market could recover as a result of the pandemic concerns lessening. People will go back to work. The construction market will get busier. And so if you recall a couple of years ago, I was kind of warning you that prices were really going to be bad. And that's because the construction market was so busy. And then, we're the fortunate beneficiaries of a disaster in terms of the pricing we've received this year. So that's about all that's been bugging me a little bit.
Good cop, bad cop.
Thanks. Lou?
Yeah, I just was gonna say it's so amazing to see how much work is happening on so many different schools at the same time. It's almost mind-boggling because I only see Lincoln right here going up, but I know there's all these projects. So anytime I see them all together, I'm just like knowing how intensive that work is there, and knowing that's multiplied across town at all the schools, and all the efforts is like pretty unbelievable and awesome to see. I just wanted to say that and appreciate all the work that goes into that. I know they're out there like 6 days a week, starting at the crack of dawn or before it's even light out, and going all the way until the evening when it's dark. And there's a lot of dedication by the crews, and wanted to appreciate that. And I did have one question about furniture, but maybe we can talk about it another time, of like how those decisions are made, and what kind of, who's supported with the dollars and stuff, so that I can hold off on another time if we're going to have Melanie in at some point.
And there will be some board activity on approvals of contracts coming up month and a half or so.
Okay.
On some of that. So reporting is timely.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it was just, it's a curiosity over if it's using like prison labor and that kind of stuff. which happens a lot for schools and colleges. So yeah.
Thanks, Lou. Up next is Jay.
Comment. Thank you. It's amazing. This gigantic of a job is becoming so almost routine. Kim, you're doing a great job. So it's almost like, we can't be routine, but it's wonderful. And just a personal request, could you leave the big excavator at the Husky place a little bit longer? My 2-year-old, it's his highlighted as a commute to Grandpa's house every 2 days. So leave it there as long as you can. That's all I'm asking. Thanks.
Well, pretty soon there's going to be cranes, Jay. So
that's okay. That'll be a sub. Thank you.
Well, with that, I want to ask Kim, speaking of surprises, I'm reminded by the visit with the bond oversights and some fellow board members to different places, and there was a graffiti there tutorial or show that took the cover page of the newspaper. So what happened to that? Is it gone?
Not yet.
Keeping it for posterity, I guess. No, we need to get that taken care of. We just haven't been out again yet to demonstrate this, scrub it off. So, but yeah, that was a really special moment.
Yes, and for those who are watching or were not with us, there is a special material applied to the walls that makes it easier to scrub out the graffiti, which is awesome. And there was a tutorial for us to see. All right, with that, any further questions?
Well, I want to point out that it was a tutorial, but it wasn't actually on our brand new building that Kim was spray painting. It was on a sample. So we're not spray painting our brand new buildings.
And that the facilities director does not normally spray paint anything, just to be clear. So.
And our facilities director has lost sleep over that moment.
It's all in good spirits. So that's good. Don't worry. Well, Kim, with that, I want to just say this project is the highlights of this town and community. Thank you for staying resilient through the wildfires and the pandemic. Keeping moving on along with the project promise, and we have people employed, local subcontractors employed, and creating jobs in the community and making our schools better. So sincere appreciation for all the work you do. It's really the highlight of this community that we're doing this difficult time, and we're doing it strong and in a resilient way. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Last minute questions? Seeing none. Thanks a lot to Dale and Kim. And next up is student investment account agreements. We do have a report and also proposed action. However, I want to ask Olivia and Ryan if there's a presentation or any information you would like to share before we open up for questions or deliberation.
No, it just included a cover sheet.
All right. With that, fellow board members, we do have a request for action and a cover sheet that explains that regarding the students' investment accounts agreement. I would like to entertain a motion first.
I'll happily move. I move to approve the district student investment account grant agreement.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
And that was moved by
That was me, Sarah.
Adam, and second by Vice Chair Finger McDonald. Do I hear any questions or discussion on the motion?
I'm sorry, I've lost my participant panel.
All right, Vince, go ahead.
So Olivia, I just want to confirm my understanding. So the state budget reduced appropriation to the student investment account by about 66% or so. And really my question is, how are those reductions going to be applied, or how are you planning to apply them? Are those across the board? Are those targeted cuts? And then also I had a question about FTE, reductions in FTE. Is that proportional, and how is that all rattling out in the budget?
Yeah, so with regard to the activities funded by the grant, there aren't really any changes there. It's just at a lower level of funding. And so you'll recall that our student investment application, our student investment account application really mirrored our multi-year strategic financial plan. We have our board goals, we have our instructional priorities, and the strategic investments that we've been working on and working towards. And so a lot of alignment there. And so I would say we haven't abandoned anything. We haven't, not moved forward on anything. We've just reduced what was funded by this grant. And so everything else is still currently funded through other means. And so the activities are still proceeding. It's just from a different funding source. And then next year, we know the funding is expected to increase significantly. And so we'll have to kind of do another rebalancing of that as we go. But for this first year of implementation, it's just kind of been a little tricky, and obviously, just now getting to the grant agreement and having the funds released once the grant agreement is executed, and then we'll have access to the funds because we've been spending the money since the beginning of the year. So in terms of what's funded by the grant, we are funding, our mental health and wellness related FTE, our school library FTE. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's a link to the application and the cover sheet, and everything's kind of covered. It just may not be at the level that it was noted in the application.
So I just want to confirm my understanding. You're not expecting any programmatic impacts. You've been able to reappropriate from other sources or somewhere else in the budget to ensure that we shouldn't expect to see any programmatic impacts.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions? Right, see none. It's been moved by Director Adams to approve the district's student investments accounts, SIA grants agreements. All those in favor say aye when called upon. Director Conroy?
He was muted.
You were muted.
Hi. Aye, can you hear me?
Vice Chair Finger McDonald?
Aye.
Director Whitebear?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Baker?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Passes. Thank you for the work. All right. Next item on the agenda is public hearing for testimony regarding resolution number 20-1202 supplemental budget for general fund and grants fund. The hearing is open. All right, so the resolution is number 201201. And the hearing is now hereby open. We do not have any community members or members of the public signing up for testimony, so the hearing is closed. And now I would like to open up for our board members. If you do have any questions, or before that, do we have a presentation or any information to share?
No, it was all included in the informational report.
Wonderful. Vince, what's your question?
So Olivia, and I'm just again confirming my understanding. So I'm seeing from what you shared with us that there's about a $6.5 million reduction in the general fund resources, but we're seeing about a $2.5 million increase in the grants fund. So if my understanding is correct, that's a net of about a $4 million change in the district's fiscal position. Yes?
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
Great. And so the other question I have here is, so I was looking at the unaudited financials from September and October, and you anticipated a reduction in tax revenue. but we're in the supplemental budget. We're seeing you're predicting an $850,000 increase in tax revenue. And I was just curious, did we get better performance out of taxes, local taxes or local revenue than we were expecting?
Yes, our local option tax levy compression decreased. So when compression decreases, we receive more tax revenue, and that happened this year. So the local option tax amount reflects an increase compared to the budget. And in terms of general fund revenues, that's the primary change. That's a positive change. The other things are decreases in our operating revenues, and mostly through the state school fund because of the enrollment decline.
Right. Thank you. So last question. And so that $4 million reduction in our fiscal position, about what percentage is that of our operating revenue? Ballpark? Or is that too? I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
It's okay. 4 million is about 4% of our operating revenue.
So this is what happens when board members don't prep their packet early enough, and so they just jump staff with wonky questions. So I know that you've been working really hard to get this budget to balance and work. Can you talk about how you've realized savings? I know that there's impacts from the pandemic and changes in operations. Can you just discuss with the board the things that you've done to realize cost savings in the budget and get this thing to balance, to bring the supplemental budget?
Yeah. Back in July, we made department reductions throughout the district. So each district department reduced their budgets by 5%. So that was one of the very first things we did right out of the gate. We implemented a hiring freeze at that time. And then during the months of July and August, reviewed all of the vacant positions in our budget and did eliminate about 25 FTE that was budgeted but vacant. And that happened right in the middle of August. And then as we began the school year, the savings in operational costs outside of the staffing costs are primarily related to student transportation services. So we are paying our contractor kind of a minimum amount that's outlined in our contract when we operate for less days, below a certain number of days, there is an amount we still have to pay. However, we're not spending at the level that we normally would for student transportation. We spend about $6 million a year on student transportation. It is reimbursed through the state school fund formula at 70%. So the savings isn't a huge number, but it is still a significant savings at this point in time. What it will be for the year is still hard to say, because the moment that we start hybrid on-site instruction, our costs are going to be more than they normally would be because of having to transport in a different way. So it's kind of hard to say what it will actually be. So in essence, we've left the budget for student transportation alone, and we are just projecting a lower cost. And so when we look at our projected spending, we just assume that we're going to be spending a smaller percentage of our general fund budget than we usually do. We usually spend 98% of our budget in a typical year. And so we've lowered the assumption around what our spending level will be, so that drives the ending fund balance up. And so that's part of one of the things that we look at when we're looking at the overall big picture is the spending, the underspending will be higher than what we normally experience. The other area in terms of costs and the representative costs would be our substitute costs. I wouldn't say that it's dramatically decreased from our instructional model, but it's decreased because we're not because of professional development and changes around areas where we would have substitutes in situations where teachers were, out of their classroom on a given day for profession. We're not doing anything like that right now. And so that's primarily where we're seeing the savings for substitutes.
So great. And you started talking about big picture. And so I know you're thinking about next year, and I know that there's a huge amount of uncertainty, but can you discuss, what the fiscal position of the district's going to be next year? You're talking about maybe underspending this year, and also we have the reserves to consider. I know that we don't know what revenue is going to look like next year. There's a lot of hope, but can you discuss what the next budget cycle might look like?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, we've finalized our estimate of membership and revenues. So our enrollment projection for next year, it's due to the state on January 8th, but we have finished it, and we're just it's kind of on ice right now. And our revenue estimates for next year have been completed. So our property tax estimates for next year and the assumptions we use around how much our assessed value will increase and the collection rate. And just looking at super high level, just what we know, the state school fund, the governor's recommended budget at $9.1 billion. Our general fund is going to have a deficit that will have to be corrected in order to maintain the reserves at the policy level. The amount is probably right now between 3 and 3.5 million, but we haven't reconciled the increase in the student investment account that we know is coming as well. And so we'll have to identify, the items that we'll fund with that grant. And so, the true, correction that will need to be made is still kind of hard to say right now. And we haven't finalized a lot of the assumptions on our spending for next year yet. So we haven't talked about the assumptions we're going to use in terms of the increase in salary and benefits, or depending on some of our large contracts, whether we have the contract in place for next year and is there an increase already built into that or not. So we haven't gotten very far on the spending side, but the enrollment projection is done, and our major revenue projections are done as well.
So what I'm hearing is kind of a departure from the previous discussion. I mean, funding at 9.1 it's not the increase that we would be looking for, but I'm not hearing that we're going to fall off a cliff next year. Is kind of the tone that I'm hearing, because I think back, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were considering, we might need to tap reserves next year. Is that a realistic expectation, or are we going to be able to avoid that maybe?
I think we have a lot of big conversations to come around our instructional priorities, and I think some revisiting to do. And I think next year will present us with some new challenges. And I think it really is going to come down to how we prioritize our spending. I told Ryan a couple of weeks ago that, it doesn't mean we can't do anything new, but if we do anything new, it definitely will require a shifting or, re-examination. And so I think there's lots of opportunities. It's not a situation that I would say is falling off a cliff. It doesn't feel like that to me. If the student investment account was not increasing, I think I'd be more worried. So it's just like a kind of trying to put the big puzzle together and get all the pieces to fit. But I do think there are going to be new challenges, and there will be requests for funding to support students in some different ways. And so I think that will require us to have some conversations around prioritization.
I've mentioned to Olivia that it comes down to a Senate race in Georgia. I think it does have a lot to say. There's a lot to be said for COVID relief and how that will shake out as well, which is hard to say.
Yeah, that's the reality of it. All right, it's okay. I'll move to Jay and then Sarah, and then I have a quick question as well. Sarah, well, Jay, you're up next.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I guess Vince's comments spurred a thought. So, Olivia, first of all, hard work, lots of puzzle pieces. Ryan, lots of puzzle pieces. You cut in FTE. Could you give me a picture of what that looks like in terms of classroom instruction cuts and impact on per teacher kind of ratio? I mean, I know our enrollment's down, but did we make cuts in teaching staff to help fill that FTE cut?
No, it's primarily been through positions, classified positions, honestly, positions where we have an adult working potentially one-on-one with the student. And at this point, those students aren't all back in school. And so there are some positions that we will need when we return to in-person learning, but right now they're positions that we haven't filled. So primarily that's the kinds of positions that we have had posted and are holding off on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Jay, and I would also give you this figure, and this is part of the reconciliation that we'll need to make as we get into next year's budget, is that our enrollment decreased by 325 students. And our classroom FTE allocation decreased by 0.75 FTE. So we know that our class sizes right now are really small. And we know that as we go into next year and we've projected our enrollment for next year, we sort of have to make that reconciliation happen.
Well, that was my second comment, is that I think we're on a yo-yo because we're going to have some people coming back. I hope students coming back. I think we talked about some of those people are either homeschooling or in private schools perhaps. And when we have full-time classes, they'll be back. So I feel badly for you trying to project what that's going to look like, but I think we're gonna gain some kids back. So wait and see. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I would just say the budget is just a plan.
Yeah.
So if we have more students show up at the door than what we have planned, that doesn't mean that we can't add staff to make sure that we maintain appropriate class sizes.
And the state of Oregon prediction that, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're predicting about a 50% return rate. And I think that's a conservative measure for us because as you remember, most of our kids didn't go to online charters, they went to homeschool. And so I do anticipate that that's probably, that's the floor as far as I'm concerned with students returning.
Good. I have a quick question about the CARES Act. It says that we received around $800,000 from the CARES Act. So I have two questions about it. The first one is, I know the state was restricted to spend it by December 31st. Are we also restricted to spend by December 31st, or can we use it beyond that?
No, we don't have a restriction of December 31st, but I would say we've spent all that money already. It's all, well, we've spent over 90% of what we've received at this point.
Okay, and could you tell me more? I know here that you talk about three categories: distance learning technology, professional learning for teachers, and PPE. Could you speak more about those categories, like what kind of things are we spending?
So our comprehensive distance learning grant, that was a smaller amount. We used those funds to pay for an additional workday for our certified staff for some professional learning around using technology tools. We also used that grant to fund some additional time for our DLI teachers to work on curriculum development. And then the rest of that grant, is a set aside for Muddy Creek Charter School. They used the funds to purchase Chromebooks, student devices. And we have a couple of private schools participating as well. And again, their purchases were related to student devices as well. The ESSER grant we used mostly for PPE and sanitation, about $350,000. And then for distance learning technology, that went towards things like the online learning platforms, Apex, Florida Virtual, the Wi-Fi hotspots, increasing our Zoom subscription, something to do with the like the, I don't know the right word, but the Wi-Fi like hotspots we set up at schools, where you can park in the parking lot. So, we installed some technology in the buildings to allow that to happen as well. And then the rest of the funds went towards additional staff time for like our registrars, our office staff, for the work they did in July and August relating to developing cohorts and working on student schedules and communication with students and families. We have some what we call Canvas coaches. So we have some staff at the secondary level who are advanced Canvas users who are receiving stipends to train other staff on how to become more Canvas savvy. And then again, set asides for Muddy Creek Charter School. They use the funds to purchase student devices, and a couple of private schools who I think use the funds for PPE.
Good. Well, thank you. Money well spent. With that, I would like to entertain a motion, or Vince, if you have any other questions.
No, I just like to express appreciation for this conversation and move that I move that resolution number 20-1201 be adopted to amend budgeted resources and appropriations in the general fund and grants fund.
All right, do I hear a second?
I second it. This is Jay.
Second by Jay. And any further discussion? So on the motion that was moved by Director Adams and seconded by Dr. Conroy, I would like to ask Dr. Adams, what's your vote?
Aye.
Dr. Conroy, what's your vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director White-Fair, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Baker, what's your vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes. We have supplemental budget. Thank you. All right,
Thanks,
next
Olivia.
item on the agenda. Yeah, thanks a lot. Next item on the agenda is updates on bullying, harassment, data, and tracking.
Hi, it's me, and I don't have anything to give to you, but I just wanted to give you a few updates. And a lot of this is going to feel like we're kind of rolling into that conversation around the all students belong policy that we're going to be taking a look at later on this evening. So with regard to data, I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that in taking a look at bullying and harassment data in our data system, what has become very apparent to me is that we need to do some more training and work around alignment and consistency in the way that we're tracking that data. There just seems to be some differences between levels and also between schools. And I think that what we have here is an opportunity with the all students belong policy coming through with the data tracking responsibilities there as well. We have a good positioning for all of us to come together and kind of realign all of that work throughout the buildings. So what I'm looking forward to is an opportunity to work with administrators and behavior staff as far as the literal coding and tracking of information when it comes to bullying and harassment, as well as our bias incident responses. The other two areas that I wanted to just kind of quickly update are on response and also training and education. When I think about response for bullying and harassment incidents, I think about how the board goal of improving health and wellness in our district is really driving us in the right direction, driving us towards healing-centered responses and trauma-informed approaches. I also want to point out that the addition of personnel, like our increase in elementary counseling, which I know happened a while ago, but that is building upon itself as far as payback for our kids and our families, as well as the obviously the mental health staff that and that program that started last year. That both of those personnel really help us to shift the way we look at response to bullying and harassment incidents, and they will also be super helpful when it comes to bias response. The other is the addition of SEL curriculum for elementary, middle, and high school. Again, giving us the opportunity to work with students and the language to work with kids around these kinds of incidents happening on campus, and how we can make sure that our approach to response is strengths-based and healing-centered, trauma-centered. The other thing is we have a lot of structures already in place in our district, like multi-tiered systems of support, our equity focus, and are all going to, again, drive us to that position where our response to bullying, harassment, and the bias incidents are going to be very strong. So I'm really excited about that kind of work. And then the last thing I wanted to just touch on was training and education. And that's really kind of where all of this is going to live. So we have more training and education that we need to do with our staff and with administrators on bias incident and bias incident response. And what I'm seeing a need for is to wrap around harassment and bullying in that as well, because we need to be able to discriminate between the incidents and also decide where there's overlap and where we have to respond to something as a bias incident, as well as maybe a different kind of incident, just to make sure that we are covering all of our bases and understand the implications for our students. So I know that was really quick. It's also like 9:07, and so I wanted to make sure and respect that. But I think my final thought is an assurance to the board that I understand that there's work that needs to be done with regard to kind of aligning and creating consistency with bullying and harassment data, as well as work that needs to be done with the new policy once it's adopted, and training our staff and our staff and administrators with working through the all students belong policy. So I feel like that's going to be a package that I'm going to have to wrap up together and prepare some trainings for the spring as far as kind of rolling all of that out. So in a quick nutshell, that's what I wanted to give to you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Your voice was going on and off a little bit just toward the last 30 seconds or so. Looks like the mic, but we have a question from Vince and then Luke.
So really, I have a double-barreled question. One, I'm just curious in your training and development of bias response. I'm just curious where restorative practices might be playing a role there. And then you also mentioned social emotional learning curriculum. Do you predict that there may be changes in curriculum that the board would need to consider?
I don't know that. I think that a lot of what we're already doing with regard to curriculum is going to help with bias incident response. I think about the equity lessons that are happening already in our elementary schools and the eventual rollout of those kinds of lessons to our middle and high school. So I think we're already making that happen as part of the process within the school buildings. And then the first, can you repeat the first question? Sorry, you gave me two. What was the first question again?
Sorry.
It's okay. You said it was double-barreled. I'm ready.
It was double-barreled.
Yeah.
So the first one is you were talking about response and just increasing capacity and alignment in response. And I was just curious where restorative practices might be playing a role in that.
They will play a role. And what I'm seeing is, like I said, again, that overlap with the all students belong policy. It talks a lot about using restorative justice as a part of the response, and that the response should not be, punitive. It needs to be a response that is more along those lines of restorative justice. And what I'm hoping to see is also that kind of impacting how we respond to bullying and harassment as well, because all of these policies are going to kind of come together in some way and fold together. So I'm trying to find the best of everything in order to make sure that we're responding in a way that is, again, trauma-informed, healing-centered, and restorative justice as well for all of these incidents.
And I'd just like to say I really appreciate your excitement with this work.
Thanks.
It's really awesome.
I love alignment. Ask Ryan. I love aligning things. It's like the best.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lou, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks for your work on this, Melissa, and same, like, acknowledging there's still work to do. There always is with this kind of work. And I'm kind of curious with the local work being done in the city, if there's any alignment yet with that. Sorry, it is after 9.
Okay.
I'm like, the words are here, they're in my mind. Okay, the work that's being done with the bias response stuff in town. I know from attending city council meetings and like providing testimonies and stuff on that development, that there was a lot of interest, and I think they reached out to Ryan too on partnering at some point. But I kind of feel like the school district is ahead on this than those efforts, and so I don't know if those are going to be in alignment at some point, or if you all are thinking ahead on data sharing, is more what my curiosity is, because I think it needs to happen on its own within the schools, because that way it can be handled within the schools. But then also, like, on the other hand, if there's going to be a larger citywide and even countywide effort happening, will there be data share at some point, or is that too far down the road? And it just came in my mind, sorry, but yeah.
Well, Ryan and I both attended a work group around those the conversations around that position, that anti-bias position, and what I think, and Ryan can speak, for himself, but what I noticed from my work group and what they were asking us to do, our school district is really kind of far ahead, and a lot of the I think the one place where I feel really proud of how far ahead we are is that so many of our staff have done the personal work around racial equity and working through their own, trying to find their own equity lens and understanding their own bias and internal bias. And that is something that where we're kind of, it's not light years, but we definitely are ahead. I can see the benefit of sharing data, but we haven't really talked about that as at all. And Ryan, I know, has talked to Mark Shepard, so maybe he has more.
I think for me, attending the last community forum, which was just a couple of weeks ago, again with Melissa, I think that there are areas and aspects that the city is trying to work on that will, areas where we can find some alignment. So I keep thinking about it in terms of our equity pillars and in terms of recruiting and retaining staff of color. I know that's also an area that the city's been talking about, and what avenues and ways can they help to enhance the diversity of our community. And so understanding that that's the work that the city wants to take on, as well as board goals that you established and the work that we want to do as a school district, I see a number of different areas for potential collaboration. So to me, I didn't necessarily focus specifically on that one key component of the task force. It was thinking of sort of more broadly about where are we in a lot of different areas, and how can we work with the city. So that was my takeaway from that initial meeting.
Great, thank you. And just one final comment about it is I really appreciate that the school district kind of like puts things into action and looks for ways to address things while developing it as well, because that need is there, instead of like trying to figure the whole thing out from top to finish, because you all know that there is a need. So thanks.
Right. Director Adams?
Yeah, and I'm just following along. I really appreciate Director Whitebear bringing this up. I would look to the district to be a leader in this space. And I applaud your efforts of, working with the city. And I would say, look to the board. It's part of our role to create will in the community and with other electeds. So please look to us for advocacy on this topic. So be happy to step into that space.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Agreed. All right, any further questions? Melissa, thank you so much for this update. All right, up next is the Young FSEC Memorial Scholarship Application Criteria. As a reminder, we are subscribed in Oregon School Board Association Professional Development, and that commitment gets us as a board to award a scholarship to a student or students.
Yeah.
So Ryan, do you want us to fill us in with the next steps with this exciting opportunity?
Yeah, so I just have a couple of slides just to kind of frame where we're at. And so Lindsay, if you want to just take us through it. So, this is the second year that you've been involved in OSBA training with a focus on a specific area. Last year, you focused on mental health. And so again, what I'm going to share with you is information that you already know, but I think it's also outward facing, and it's good for the community to know that you are a board that's committed to professional development and board governance, and that you take the time and you put the time in to do that well. So in a lot of ways, this is more outward facing than it is as a representation of sharing information that you don't already know. So we applied to be part of that process last year. We worked with Kristen Miles, who came to multiple board meetings, and we focused on our mental health work. As a result of that, we focused on communication with the community about the work that was underway and a better board understanding of our mental health program, basically how it looked for year one rollout, but also how we would be able to sustain financially. So participating in that program throughout the year, at the completion of the program, the board is awarded a $5,000 that can go towards student scholarships. And so what we need I have a couple of questions for you tonight that I need your feedback on as we move forward. So for students, for this year, we have a $5,000 scholarship. For next year, we have a $2,500 scholarship because we're doing half the program. So I want to make sure that you keep that in mind, because this will happen again next year. And I think the steps and processes we put into place for this year can be replicated and potentially enhanced for year two. So that's really what I need some feedback from you on tonight. And so I have about 5 questions for you. And they are, so we have $5,000 to award the board to award in scholarship. So what I would like to know is 3 things. How many scholarships should we give out or award this year? So should we award 1 scholarship of $5,000, or should we award 2 of $2,500? That kind of question. The next is, do we open it up district-wide? Do we focus on potentially 1 school, or do we open it up district-wide? And then the final question is, do I have 2 to 3 board members who would like to participate on a small work group to make sure that that scholarship is well put together, the rubrics is established, and that those applications can be scored. So those are the 3 pieces that I feel like I need to be able to move that work forward.
Wonderful. With that, do you want us to go question by question from the top regarding the first question? How many scholarships should we award?
So 2 things. One, I would say, do you want to, the other thing you could do is you could say, we want the group of 2 to 3 board members to make those other decisions too, right? You could say, we either want to split it up and have 2 scholarships or 3 scholarships, or really we think that there's 2 or 3 board members who should be involved in this process, and they should make all those decisions. Okay. And I'm not moving quickly because it's 9:15. I'm moving quickly because I think it's quick decisions that you can make that will just help to inform where we go from here.
All right, Vince?
I think these decisions require some thought. And so I like the appoint a committee approach and allow them to, answer these questions in a thoughtful manner, and then come back and give the board a proposal.
Okay. All right, Lou?
I was going to say something similar, that it's nice to be able to sit down and look at it and kind of think things through. And also just to let you know, Ryan, that and the rest of the board, that I used to administer a scholarship program for like 10 and a half years as in like develop the whole program and everything, and be happy to help with this if that's something you all would like help with.
I volunteer too. I have no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, we do have 2 volunteers, Lou and Vince. Is there Jake? I see a nod, well, muted. That means you are volunteering too, right? You're muted.
I would be happy to help.
Awesome. So we have a group. It's Vince, Jay, and Lou.
And that keeps us from being a quorum, and so allows us to move forward with the work. So in that case, what I'm hearing, basically as a straw poll, is bringing those 3 together to work on the criteria and bring that information back to the board. For those of you that have volunteered, it will be a quick turnaround because again, we are getting close to January and we want to get that out to kids. Perfect.
Awesome. Awesome. With that, I think the other questions we'll delegate to the group. Very efficient. I like it. All right. Thank you, Ryan. And with that, we move forward for any further comments or questions or objections on the nominations. Good. Awesome. So with that, we'll go with the consolidated action. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in the consolidated action? So let's start with identifying the things that you have question about or you want to discuss. And I will pull out policy ACB, Safe Students Policy. Is there anything else? Lou?
The minutes, I didn't realize I was unmuted too, so I apologize if there was feedback, but yeah, the minutes.
No worries. And the minutes? And anything else? Fine. I would pull up brief comments about the legislative priorities as well. Let's start with the minutes.
It was just, I think there was just one small error on it, and I really apologize. I feel like I'm always the one who points stuff out on the minutes and didn't catch it ahead of time, but it was the, I think it was supposed to be my name, not Vince's, for Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't know if that got fixed, and I see a couple of people nodding too.
Yeah, I noticed that too, but when you pulled the minutes, I figured that's what you were gonna ask about, so yes.
Oh, I should have waited so somebody else could have pointed.
Just for the record, could you identify a page or a number of paragraph on the page?
Yeah, just give me a second. I have to pull it up again. I wrote it down, but I didn't write down the page number. Sorry about that. And sorry, Lindsay, I try to look at that a little closer. But where's the minutes? There it is. It's on, yeah, it's on page 2 on the bottom, item 4. Item 9.
Awesome. Awesome. So that will be, for the record, we're changing Director Adams into Director White Bear as the person who moved, correct? All right.
And so before we leave the minutes, just I wanted just to say that sort of again appreciation. Lindsay has worked to try to modify the structure of minutes to provide some additional detail. And so I hope as you read through it, you also noticed that as a way to sort of find that balance. So it's something that she's been working on and working through minutes to bring forward to you in January, kind of having that as the lens.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That was the other thing too. Again, it's getting later in the day, but that I did notice is the structure of it was super nice to read and be able to see like the different highlighted areas. And so thank you, Lindsay, for that. I think, can we approve minutes like as amended? Because I know this one needed to get approved tonight, right?
Yeah, and if there's no objection, it's going to pass as amended.
Okay, great, thanks. Just want to make sure that that happened too for the other necessary stuff of it.
Yes, awesome. Cool. Anything else about the minutes? See none, I'll move to a very brief remark and also allow Vice Chair Sarah Finger-McDonald if she would like to comment as well about the resolution 20-1202 to adopt OSBA legislative priorities. I want to thank Sarah for your representation on the Legislative Council. So thank you for taking part of this process and representing not only the district, but also LBL, if I'm not mistaken, correct? And with that, I want to ask if you have any comments you would like to provide or anything. Sorry to call you on the spot. Other than that, just much appreciation for your contribution to that.
Yeah, I mean, this was an interesting time to get involved in that. Because of course we went from meeting for whole weekends to meeting for a couple hours on Zoom. But the one thing I think that was really stressed by the Legislative Policy Committee, and we came back to and went back to and reworked and asked for more emphasis on, was the statement on equity that was put at the beginning of the document. Initially, that was not part of it, and it was added and then it was strengthened. It really felt like the people I was working with from across the state felt, I think as our district does, that's a really key aspect to the work we're doing and for the policies that we want to you have brought forth in the legislature. The other thing that there was a lot of discussion about was protecting funding, and that discussion happened before the pandemic hit, but it worries that we didn't want to be seen as K through 12 having sort of gotten our piece of the pie with the student investment account, that we wanted to make sure that we were keeping our funding across the board, because we got what we anticipated to be one good year, we didn't want to then sit back and not keep working for sustainable sources of funding for our schools. So those were two of the big discussions, and I think they're two big discussions that started before the pandemic hit and became even more critical as we, as funding took a hit, and as we have been recognizing the disproportionate effect of this pandemic on our most vulnerable communities and students.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right, any further comments on this issue, on the resolution? See none. Next item is policy ACB, and I do have a motion for an amendment, unless there's anyone who has questions or comments. Lou.
I just had a comment, and I just wanted to let Melissa know that all the links work, since I usually point out that the links don't work. So it even downloaded the PDFs and everything. So I appreciate being able to read the supplemental information for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thanks. I want to ask you, would you be comfortable that I say it, so then we do a motion, or just mention it just like Lou mentioned it, and then so I have a language that I want to add about the Nazi swastika. So let me mention it first, probably before we go through the formality.
Yeah.
I want to point our attention to the statement that talks about defining symbols of hate, and strike through including but not limited to, all the way to whose display. So one more time, striking through including but not limited to, all the way to whose display, and change it with the following language: including but not limited to, comma, the news, comma, Hawking Cruise, comma, any other Nazi symbols, comma, or other Confederate flag and whose display. So one more time, it would read as including but not limited to the news, Hawking Cruise, any other Nazi symbols or Confederate flags and whose display. So that's my suggestion, and I checked with Stravia, who's the constituent who was one of those who provided the inputs, and I believe it will be much better for us to not only limit it to the swastika, Nazi swastika, that's number one. So we're including any other Nazi symbol. And the other thing is to really take away the culturally misappropriated name or terminology, the swastika, which is a Hindu name, and replace it with the German word for the swastika, Hakenkreuz, based on the suggestions. Lou?
I feel like when we talked about this last time, the suggestion was to put like Nazi symbols, and then there was pushback on that to include specifically swastika because it's recognizable. So I don't know if we should just go back to that instead of using the German word that folk aren't going to know what it is too, or is it specifically to like as a district to try to help educate people through policy on it? So I'm just a little bit like, I understand the intent, and I don't know if it's better just to put like instead of that specific one, since or just put Nazi symbols. So I was just curious about the choice of wanting to include. I am bad with pronouncing words, so
yeah. Absolutely. I'll be happy to speak to that. The first thing, yes, I agree with mentioning other Nazi symbols, and actually the constituent mentioned they observed other Nazi symbology, such as the salute and other things more prominent. So calling out an umbrella definition is appropriate. However, the reason I'm insisting on the Hakenkreuz specifically is that ODE in their temporary rules, the intention of the definition is specifically name these three symbols, the news, the swastika, and the Confederate flag. So my fear, if we take it out, it means only Corvallis School District is taking out a specific symbol that's been called out by every other district. And I feel it's just appropriate for us to call out that symbol as well in the specificity of these three definitions. And I know someone could argue, well, other Nazi symbols encompasses the Nazi swastika. So that's where I was a little bit conflicted about really whether to take it out or leave it. I think leaving it will still keep the intent of ODE of calling out these specific symbols. The other thing about not mentioning the Hakenkreuz, my feeling, and correct me if the thinking is not really in the right direction. If we call out this on a policy level, board level, we're being anti-racist and reversing a culturally misappropriated name for tens of years, since the early 30s, 40s. And we're saying it's not the swastika, it's a Hindu symbol, it's a Hakenkreuz. If we don't do that, I believe on a parent level, student level, teacher level, that conversation still could happen. But I think we should really walk the reversal of culturally misappropriation of symbols on a board level, and we call it out. True, people will need to be educated about it, and that's part of it. I think so. That's I don't know if that answered the two questions.
That does, Sammy, and I appreciate that because I also like to use the language to show like why it's like this is an appropriation, and that could be an educational piece as well. But the word swastika is the one that is appropriated, right? Not just the symbol itself, right? And so because I think it's important to note that that symbol also has other origins and has been used multiple, and even here in Oregon with tribes in their basket designs and stuff. And so I think a lot of people don't know that that was a tribal design too for several different tribes in North America and other indigenous groups around the world, including it being a Hindu symbol. But in this context, it's a specific word itself, right? That is the issue. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And makes sense.
Thanks. We have Sarah and then Vince.
Yeah, I was writing it down And one of the issues I had with the wording that you presented was that as you read it, to me, it was listing the noose and the Hakenkreuz as Nazi symbols. And that was just sort of how I was hearing it. So I don't know if we want to put the noose, you know, Hakenkreuz and other Nazi symbols, Confederate flag and other Confederate symbols, or a noose, so that that doesn't sort of somehow get, it's not nooses that we have an issue with. It's only if it's in this Nazi symbolism piece somehow. And it was just how I was hearing it as you were reading it. And I don't know if other people heard that or not, but just to think about the order of those things so it's clear what we're doing. And Sammy and I had a conversation about this afternoon, and I agree that we don't want to appropriate language any more than we want to appropriate symbols, especially for use as hate symbols. So I think we had some discussion about people maybe not knowing what a Hakenkreuz is, but I would rather somebody have to go figure that out than continue that appropriation. Is sort of where I'm coming down on that.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sammy, can I hop back in just because it's related to the language sequence? Can we do like a colon and then use semicolons? That way it separates them out very specifically. Does that make sense? Like instead of just using commas with a bunch of ands, the semicolons like help keep it separated in a different way. So it'd be like including but not limited to, and then the new semicolon, Nazi swastikas and other Nazi symbols, or not swastikas, Hakenkreuz, and then semicolon Confederate flag, and whatever all the other things. That way it's like grouped together by the semicolons. If that makes sense, that's how they're usually used in all this. So anyways, thank you.
So
I agree, Lou, that would make it clearer.
Mm-hmm. So just to make sure if we're all okay with this, what you're saying is not limited to the news, semicolon, Hakenkreuz, semicolon, any other Nazi symbol, semicolon, or other Confederate flag, or Confederate flag and whose display.
It would be the Hakenkreuz and Nazi symbols would be separated by a comma. It would be like Hakenkreuz and other Nazi symbols because the semicolons are grouping things. And so that's where like that's how it keeps the commas and semicolons, keeping little groupings together. Thanks for listening to my rhetoric background.
Thank you.
If I could just, Sammy, just quickly, without, before you get too far down the road, I think it's important for you to remember that in the model display that was model policy that was given to us by OSBA, they specifically call out, we strongly advise that a district not add to these symbols of hate without first consulting with legal counsel. And by adding other Nazi symbols, I think we're adding other symbols of hate. And that's concerning to me given our timeline and that I know I haven't consulted with legal counsel on that aspect.
Thank you, Melissa, and I apologize for not checking in on that. So as a reminder, the timeline, we need to have a policy passed by January 1st, this is the last meeting for it. And we're expecting some updates from ODE as well afterwards. Vince?
So, and I'm also raising a concern. This policy adoption is related to our Division 22 standards compliance. And so I would really like to hear an opinion from ODE on a proposed amendment, whatever that is. So I completely agree with the sentiment that you're raising and the intention behind this amendment. I just think that we need to be a little more cautious in our approach because we're in a tight, regulatory environment.
Okay.
Based on that, one of the considerations the board could make would be to adopt the policy tonight as written, and then at the same time we can continue, we can take that back to get guidance and then bring it back for to be readopted.
Okay.
So that's an option that you would have tonight.
Okay. And just to make sure, are we leaning, so for sure now, I think we're okay with taking out the other Nazi symbols, but we're leaning to keep it as Nazi swastika, or do you think we still need a council for changing the Nazi swastika to Hawk and Cruz?
I have my hand up to push back on that. I think that a Hawk and Cruz is the same thing. And if we're trying to be inclusive with our policies, I mean, if a Hawk and Cruz is the same thing, a Nazi Hawk and Cruz is the same thing as a Nazi swastika, they're both different languages that mean the same exact symbol, right? And so I would say that maybe we should consider that it's the actual symbol, and one is in one language and another is in the same other language, but it's the same exact symbol. And when in fact, if it was called a Hawk and Cruz in Nazi Germany, that's actually the appropriate word to use versus a swastika, which is used beyond that. So that's just during the time period in which it was used. And that would be my only pushback on advocating for honoring the constituents' concerns of appropriating the language. So, but I do think that leaving the other part out would be good, and as a board with the intention of coming back, because we can amend policies, right? And so that would be something we can keep in mind. Yes. And address that immediate concern that was brought by the community.
Awesome. Vince?
Yeah, I would just urge caution with any deviation from this policy at this point and get an opinion from ODE. So even with the change to Hawk and Cruz, I completely agree with the change, but I just would really appreciate having that opinion from them before proceeding with this.
Okay. Jay?
My question would be, using a footnote, is it going to be offensive to people if you say Hawk and Cruz and put a footnote commonly known as, or colloquially known as a Nazi, and you drop it down? I mean, to me, a lot of time and appropriately in one respect, but if you could run it by, a proposal that included a footnote, we could amend this down the road. So
I would also, I just want to interject. The symbol is also known as a bent arm cross as well. So in English, but that is a generic term for a symbol that's used in a variety of different cultures.
So I had an experience where I was able to hear students speak to this, and also hear both Colt Gill and Carmen listen to students, and at the end of that conversation say, we tried to do this, we tried to move quickly with it, and in that instance, we recognize that also caused some harm based on what they heard from the students. And so I would say, I would still say, give advice to go ahead and use the word Hawk and Cruz. And I would only say that based on what I heard from the Department of Ed directly speaking to what they were trying to accomplish and where it may have fell short. And so because I had that sort of a unique experience, I would encourage you to take that step further. Again, had I not had that experience, I would have probably been more conservative in my approach to this. But because I have had that additional experience and heard the perspective of those working directly with the state board on the language, I feel like that's a safe move.
We have Jay and then Vince. Vince? So
then with that additional input, if the superintendent feels that we are safe in making this amendment, I would really appreciate a restatement of the motion, so I can fully understand what that language is going to look like. And now that I have the document in front of me, I can kind of follow along.
Absolutely. So it would read as but not limited to the news, Nazi Hakenkreuz, or Confederate flag, and whose display. So strike swastika and add Hakenkreuz.
But do not strike Nazi. Is that right?
Yeah, let's keep the Nazi. I think let's keep the Nazi. It's,
okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
And just because Lou had mentioned it before, just again to check, if we do it this way, do we still want to do colons and semicolons?
I don't think we need to with this one because it's not grouping things together. It's like when you start adding related things and then there's tons of commas that get confusing.
Yeah.
But since those are three distinct things, it works just with commas.
Okay.
Vince?
Would the chair entertain a motion?
Absolutely. What's your motion?
I move that items in consolidated action be approved pending language changes to policy ACB as discussed and the October 8th, 2020 board meeting minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Who did that first? It was probably Sarah, right?
Sure.
All right, Sarah gets it. So moved by Vince and seconded by Sarah. Any further comments or deliberation on the motion? Seeing none, let's take a vote. Vince, what's your vote?
Aye.
Jay, what's your vote?
Aye.
Lou, what's your vote?
Aye.
Sarah, what's your vote?
Aye.
Tina, what's your vote?
Aye.
And I vote aye, passes. Thank you. That was good. All right.
And I'd just like to say we've got the coolest policy ACB in the state.
We do. We do. Yes. All right. So with that, and I can't wait until we have it on the docket amended, so I'll share it with others. So with that, consolidated information, we do have items on the consolidated information. As a reminder, there's no action needed for consolidated information. But does anyone want to ask any questions on it? Jake.
I have a minor suggestion on the regulation, ACB regulation. Let me go ahead? Or,
yeah, go ahead.
Because I got lost when I read it, I think somebody else who has to deal with the policy might get lost. So in the regulation, it says conduct is defined in policy. And I went looking all over for where that was, what policy. So if you added the words is defined in policy ACB, you would stop the next vice principal or principal from having to struggle. I went, where is that? And the answer, if you just look at the policy, it's in ACB.
Thank you. I'll add that.
Awesome. Any further comments or questions on consolidated information? All right, seeing none. Any board member comments? Sarah, what's your comment? You're muted.
You're muted.
I need to hear you.
I'm all agog. Congratulations to Dr. Sammy I'm sorry, I practiced this and I am still gonna mess it up because it's 10 minutes to 10. Abdraba. I'm sorry. I apologize.
We go by in the Middle East.
But
we go by
congratulations on
you.
joining the club of people who can use the honorific doctor if they choose. And also, I want to reiterate what Vince said about it takes a community to get our kids back to school. we heard in this meeting not only about plans for returning kids to school on a limited basis, but also adjustments we're having to make to our budgets because of impacts of the pandemic. And both of those things could be made easier if businesses were fully functioning and people were doing what they could to social distance and bring this virus under control while we wait for immunization to happen. So I just, as you're making decisions, as you're making decisions about the holidays, please remember that a major part of your decisions about how you will celebrate should be, what do we want for our children for this school year and for following school years where budgets will be impacted if the economic impacts are drawn out. So.
Thank you. Lou?
I was also going to mention congratulations and really appreciate you sharing your moment with us and your research, and it was really amazing to be able to witness that. And so congratulations, Doctor, and I'm excited for you. And I also wanted to add a note of gratitude to the rest of the board. This is my wrapping up my full first year. So it's month 12 as a colleague with you all on this board. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for you all believing in me in that selection process, and say that it's been great over this past year to get to know you and get to know you, Ryan and Melissa and the rest of the staff in this capacity, and of all the years to hop on when I asked Sammy how much work is involved. I don't think he was envisioning a global pandemic or anything. But I'm happy to be here, and I just wanted to express that gratitude as I wrap up a full year. That kind of stuff's important to me to do.
Thank you, Lou. Jane?
I wanted to raise a question or a concern that I talked to Sammy about this afternoon, and I sent to you all a couple of email excerpts from a couple of parents who are bright, science-oriented, and are weighing in that the policies that we are living under, and Ryan, you're doing a great job living under these policies, may not be as supported by Harvard studies and other good science. And therefore, my point is, our governor and the OHA may be inclined to listen and move differently on it if they are presented with that opportunity. And I think there's a special session set up in a week. And I guess I'm just urging those of you who have input to legislators to have them give that consideration. I absolutely care deeply about our kids, but I also, in terms of their safety, but I think what we're getting from those excerpts, what I'm really torn about is that the science says maybe they would be absolutely fine, and in fact better because of all the other related health concerns that are not being addressed when we are keeping them out of school, that they might be better off if they're in school. So please, Governor and OHA, consider seriously getting us more in school. And I talked to Sammy, as an old lawyer, I remember clearly one of the problems is liability and fear in districts and other places to opening up schools and maybe opening up liability, that we would also encourage the legislature to give districts protection from liability. So long story, we could debate a resolution like crazy, but I think what I really am asking is that for those of you who are involved with legislators, that you ask them to think about that as another piece of the puzzle that we're looking at. No easy answers. I looked on the data today. Oregon is 47th out of 50 states in terms of infection rate. so in one respect, we're down at the bottom, but we also are one of what, 6 states that are not have very limited schools. And so I'm asking for some thoughtful input to legislators, hoping they might get our kids back sooner. It's not, again, it's not to knock what we're doing or to give us a major headache in schools, because we're doing the best we can. But I really think that that's something to be thought about. So thank you. And Sammy, congratulations. Thanks for being part of it.
Thank you, and thanks for asking the question. Vince?
So again, congratulations, Dr. Alabdurba. And Jay, you bring up an important point. And yes, in the special session, liability for schools will be taken up. And so I too will urge you to reach out to legislators and try and get some liability protection for school districts. It could really be helpful. And I just, since it looks like I have the last word, I think it's apt that I'm expressing my appreciation. And I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me say I get to experience school boards all over the state, but I do. And so this was a really packed agenda, and I just really appreciate all of you. We had several very substantive conversations tonight with a lot of folks, and it was all good board work, and we got it done in 3.5 hours, which I think is really remarkable. So I really appreciate all of you and the work. I appreciate our staff for bringing us good work to do. So thanks very much.
Awesome.
And finally, we'll see you in 21.
That's right. Well, thank you for the congratulations. Thanks, Sarah, for the background. And that's nice. And thank you all for really being of support. I couldn't do it without really a great team to work with. And I feel fulfilled while doing exciting work with the PhD. But it's not as exciting as doing the work with you. So I feel I'm filling my cup when I meet with you every Thursday, and I feel more motivated. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll see you in 2021. We are adjourned.